Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 113 of the Former Action Guys podcast. I'm your host, Justin Kramer. And this week I have on Jason Angell, who is a former Marine artillery officer. He's also an enlisted infantryman, which we talk about a little bit. He actually went to ANGLICO. He was a JTAC and stuff. We don't get into any of that. We talk about his time on this episode. We talk about his time as an infantryman when he first came in, and then his transition to going to become an officer, an artillery officer. And then we get into the invasion and his role in the invasion as he was an observer out at 5th Marines during the push up to Baghdad. Really interesting stories. You know, some of the stuff I've actually never heard of, some of these things. He talks about some of these firefights that actually happened after Baghdad was secured and stuff. So I think everyone's going to really enjoy that. So check it out and be on the lookout for the follow-on episodes that we'll do later on. I told him, you know, maybe in the next couple weeks or something, we'll sit down and record and talk about his other two deployments, which he said is where a lot more crazy stuff happened. Which when you hear the episode talking about the invasion, it's, you know, I always find it really interesting talking to these people because it's like, dude, you were part of a group that literally went and took over another country. Like that, you guys toppled Saddam Hussein. So that's a really interesting to hear that individual perspective of what that was like for them to participate in something like that. So anyways, I did get another 5-star review. I appreciate that. I'm up to 116 straight 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. If you're on Apple, please go over there and leave a review. It really helps me out in the ratings and stuff like that and bumps me up. And if you're not on Apple and you can't leave a review, then at least share the show with somebody. Let somebody know that, you know, hey, it's a good show to check out. Help us out with that. This one came from Jay Findog. He said, entertaining, informative, and unpretentious. Great way to learn from others' experience and perspective. I also enjoy how much airtime people from the sometimes underrepresented fires community get. Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I was a forward observer, JTAC, did all that stuff, including Motor T. I need to get some more mechanics on here, you know, let those guys be represented as well. But, you know, there's a lot of, when you're an attachment, sometimes you get kind of forgotten. And a lot of podcasts nowadays focus on special operations guys, which is great. I've also had special operations guys on here, but you know, I'd like to see that what's the ground pounder, the 0311, the 0861, the guy that's down there, you know, with a fire team or whatever, or he's a gunner on a, you know, with the battery, like what was their role in this? Because yeah, the soft guys get the sexy missions and fly around in the cool helicopters and stuff like that, but these guys are also in war. These guys are also getting shot at. These guys also have crazy stories and stuff like that too that they want to share. So I really appreciate the people. It's not me. I really appreciate the people that reach out to me and agree to come on the show and discuss what they did or their, you know, what they did in the war or wars sometimes. And yeah, the stories need to be told. So it's my honor to continue doing this. Thanks again for that review. Like I said, make sure to leave a review if you can on Apple Podcasts. If you're interested in being on the podcast, go to the show notes or the show description. There's a link there that says, I want to be on the Former Action Guys podcast, or I want to be on the show. I can't remember exactly. Click that link. It'll take you to the form to sign up, or you can send me your information and we can get the ball rolling on that. Yeah, other than that, as always, man, go to my website, jkramergraphics.com. Buy a t-shirt, buy a sticker, do something, buy a flag. A lot of units are buying flags and stuff like that. A lot of people are buying flags to make their team photos, their battery photos, whatever, look cooler. So be part of that. You know, jump on there and get one. If yours isn't on there, if your unit's not on there, reach out to me, shoot me an email through the contact us form on the website and let me know, like, hey, I have a design for my fire team that we want to get our own flag. Shoot that over to me and I'll make it happen, man. And if you have the design already, customization fee is $5. So the flag's $24.95. Normally, that means it's $29.95 for a custom flag. I challenge you to find a place that does something like that. Other than that, yeah, man, just enjoy the episode.
You know, I really don't look at too many of these podcasts, but I think I came across yours because of the ANGLICO connection, and it's really been great to listen to some of these guys talk about some of this stuff.
Oh, for sure, dude. It's been fun doing it. You know, it was something I had talked to. I don't know. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2018, and then in 2019, but around that time frame, like a lot of people, I was like, "Oh man, people should make a video or record me and my buddies. Like we have all these stories, and we've done, you know, and that funny stuff, not necessarily combat stuff,
talking shit."
And, yeah, just, you know, I think we're interesting people. Fuck, they watch the Kardashians. I feel like we're fucking interesting to that.
That's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, so I just I started doing a podcast at school, or we were talking about doing a podcast at school.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about starting my own. I think I'm going to do it. And I was just trying to get a commitment from a couple people I asked on a couple different formats. Not even, there was another one that wasn't even a military one. It was going to be like current events and stuff. And nobody else was like taking it seriously. So I jumped into it, and it's been awesome because one, I got to go and reconnect with a bunch of guys I served with.
Yeah.
And then two, like I've said a lot of times in the podcast, there's just so many people that have so many like crazy stories or awesome stories that no one knows about because they don't ever talk about it. Because, I mean, you could probably attest, you're out of the Marine Corps now. So when you get out and you're not around other Marines, you're like, you start to kind of feel like a douchebag talking about some stuff because
man.
you become the one-up guy and stuff.
I know.
So it's been cool. It's been fun. So no, I appreciate you reaching out. And
No problem. It's great. I really haven't, talked to many people about all this stuff in years, just because, like you said, they weren't Marines. I've talked to some Marines I knew, but if they're not, I don't really bring this stuff up. Some people ask, and you kind of just, how that is. You just, well, yeah. Sometimes you tell them stuff, but do they really want to hear some of this other stuff? I don't think they do.
It's not in that, and they can never really fully appreciate it.
I know.
Unless you've like slept in the desert, or you felt that sand in your uniform, or you've seen the sandstorm coming, or you've eaten the shitty food, or you've been yelled at by a drill instructor. Like it's those are events in the career of a military person that regular people can watch on TV and stuff, but can never fully appreciate unless you've like experienced it. It's like I think more people could get through Marine Corps boot camp than they think. There's a lot of people out there that think they could never make it because they see the TV shows and the commercials and stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of people could make it if they went out and tried. Yeah, but a lot of people just aren't willing to try.
Yeah, they try, and Marine boot camp is they try to get you to pass. They really push you to do the basics to get you to pass, versus something like OCS. They do everything they can to start cutting people left and right. And that was one big difference I noticed about the two. Is boot camp, it was mentally more difficult, and they tried to help the guys who needed the help. But OCS was all about, no, you're out. There's integrity, or you're Olympic, whatever the case is, and they're there to boot you out. But drill, I thought that boot camp, they were there to, I mean, it's tough. It's not easy at all. Not compared to OCS. It's just not easy. But they tried to help you to get you to pass, versus guys who are like, I want to quit. OCS are like, oh, you want to quit? Goodbye.
Yeah, well, I think they look at it. They're like, these dudes, we got to meet a quota of people making it through, or we got to meet a certain amount. We got to fill these line numbers on these units. Almost anyone can go and do whatever job, but officers, it's like, hey, we expect you to lead. I think that's a huge difference. Is they allow them to just quit at any time. When I got to Paris Island, they told us like, hey, the easiest way to get off Paris Island is to fucking graduate. They're like, if you do anything else, if you get hurt, if you try to get out because of a medical reason, especially if it's bullshit, like all this other stuff, they're like, you're going to sit here for a lot longer than you want.
Holding platoons and holding companies, all that stuff. Yeah.
I remember a kid we had in my platoon who said he had asthma. We were doing something. He said he had an asthma attack or some shit. So they pulled him out of the platoon and sent him over to the medical platoon to get evaluated and all that stuff. Yep. And a month later, they brought him back to our platoon to tell us how bad it was. And like, dude, they're not lying. The easiest way to, and he was like, there's a kid that's in the medical platoon that's been on the island for over 400 days. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah. So it's tough for sure. And like I was saying though, unless you've done that, it's not impossible to do. But it's not something you can fully appreciate unless you've done it, like many jobs. So you do have an interesting perspective where you got to go through both boot camp and OCS. And a lot of guys I talk to say that the OCS is way more physical.
Yeah, that definitely,
way more physical and mentally, like they fuck with you. Like they make you sit up all night writing papers and
that nonsense. I just thought that as a prior, I went there and just kind of kept my mouth shut and got to do. It kind of, I didn't say I skated through, but it wasn't mentally as challenging as boot camp. Boot camp, at least I was 18, 19, and it was tough mentally. I could do the physical aspect, but the mental part of every morning, the whole by the numbers, don't move, you can't scratch it, all that stuff just adds up. OCS, a little bit more lenient about that, but physically you have to be a first class PFT, you got to be. I mean, they're all on you all the time. If you have one injury, basically, and you miss a couple training days, they boot you out till next summer or till whenever. So it's a little bit, it's different, and for obvious reasons. And so
yeah, for sure. I mean, in boot camp, if you can do 2 pull-ups, they'll let you continue into boot camp.
Yeah,
whereas there's no way you could do that as an officer. They'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Like you're not even close to being prepared to even do the normal day-to-day PT and stuff that they're gonna make you do. Yeah, that's pretty insane. Did you go to Paris Island or San Diego?
No, I went to San Diego. I came out of Texas, and so I went to everything. I guess I don't know how it is now, but back then, at least, if east of the Mississippi, you went to Paris Island. West of the Mississippi, you went to San Diego, unless you're a female. So.
Yeah, that's the general. That was like the general rule. I was east of the Mississippi though, and everybody from Indiana goes to San Diego. For some reason. Okay, but I actually I requested Paris Island. I had my recruit. So I had read like all these I grew up my dad was in the Army and stuff, so I've read military books and seen John Wayne and Iwo Jima doing all that stuff. And Paris Island was like the place where all the people in these books went, during World War II and stuff. All these stories, and all these Paris Island guys, and I was like, dude, I want that classic Marine Corps experience. So I told the recruiter that I was like, look, I want to go to Paris Island. And he's like, I don't think I've ever had anyone request to go to Paris Island before. He's like, okay. Yeah. He's like, well, you're going to have to write a letter saying that like your family went there or something, which I didn't have any family. He's like, just lie in the letter. And I'm like, oh, honor, courage, commitment starts early. So I had to write a letter to go down to Paris Island. And what you were saying about like being online and not being able to move, and again, that's hard to appreciate that kind of like where you're at mentally at the end of 3 months of that, unless you've done it. Yeah. I've told the story a couple times. I don't know if I might have told it on the podcast, but I got done with boot camp, and it was right when that Nicolas Cage movie came out about September 11th. I think it's called September 11th or 9/11. And I remember,
fireman, right? Is that the one where he's a fireman? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and he's buried in the rubble. And I wanted to go see it. This was like 2 days after boot camp. So me and my buddy went to go watch it, and I remember sitting in the movie, and then my neck started itching. And for like 15 minutes, I just sat there thinking like, God, my fucking neck itches so bad. And I couldn't focus on the movie because my neck was itching. And then it just like clicked, like, I can scratch my fucking neck. Like, what am I doing, dude? I'm so out of it, like.
Yeah. Your left hand is on your left knee, your right hand is on your right knee, your feet were at a 45-degree angle.
Everywhere I'm going, I'm probably marching and shit, like. I remember my cousin saw me. I was standing there with like gym shorts on. I had my shirt tucked into it. She's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, why's your shirt tucked in? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I'm fucked up, man. I'm fucked up. It's good stuff. So anyway, you came in originally in the 90s. I was looking over your stuff. You came in 93 as an infantryman. Yep. So you were in for 2 years or 3 years as
I was
an enlisted
in for
guy?
3. I went in. I originally went into a boot camp in the delayed entry program in December of 92, but I don't want to wait 6 months. So in February of 93, I talked to my recruiter. He's like, I want to get going. Why wait? And he's like, okay. So I shipped off to San Diego in February 16th of 1993. Did my, 12 weeks at the time, graduated in the middle of May 1993, and then went on over to, after leave, went over to SOI. And back then, grunts went to bring MCT, Marine Combat Training, and then you did the CBAG drag over next door to Infantry Training Battalion for your MOS school. And then, that was, and I'm not sure when they changed it. I think they changed it maybe a few years after that, but everybody did MCT together, the little Quonset huts that are no longer there. And then you did the CBAG drag over to the barracks, the more of a high-rise barracks, squad base still, and then you went to Infantry Training Battalion there for your MOS school.
How was that for you? What'd you think about? Did you want to come in as infantry?
Yeah, I wanted to come in a combat MOS. So I don't know if you remember. I know you said you did open contract, but they give you 3 choices. My top choice was infantry, artillery, and then armor. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was. And I obviously got infantry back then. So did the CBAG drag, graduated. Infantry Training Battalion is at 0311. So I think it's halfway through ITB. They drop, and 11s go one way, and everybody else, 0331s, machine gunners, mortarmen, assaultmen, all that, they go to their own specific training.
Were you excited to be in 0311, or did you?
Yeah, I wanted to. I was like, I wanted to be the 11. I wanted to be the rifleman, et cetera. I thought I didn't want to be a mortarman necessarily, and I didn't know too much about assaultmen. Although after doing a lot of humps, the LAV crewmen looked pretty damn good, but they didn't pull anybody from our class to LAVs. So, and they did take some scouts because their scouts are 0311s, but the LAV crewmen looked pretty good after doing those humps and humping back and forth to the ranges every day.
That's got to be kind of a nice or a different change to go be a scout with LAR. I mean, I know guys at LAR hate being at LAR. I've talked to guys that are at LAR. For some reason, they don't like it. Or maybe they were I just talked to the disgruntled dudes. But,
Probably.
But I don't know. I don't know. What can be bad about riding in a vehicle rather than humping everywhere like you're saying?
You're still a grunt, and you do a hump, and you might you jump out and you do some local security when they stop, stuff like that. And I don't know. But
you can carry more creatures, creature comforts in the back of your vehicle. So it's
definitely.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah, man. How was checking into 3.5 back in 93? Like now they have 5th Marines has a pretty good reputation. They're one of the most decorated units in the Marine Corps. Yeah. So what was it? What was the reputation at the time?
It was that it was a no nonsense unit. 3.5, 1.5, 2.5, all of them were just a no nonsense unit, and it was a big boot drop. Almost everybody from my class went to 3.5. A few went off to Camp Lejeune. I think some Marines back then went to somewhere in some units in 29 Palms, but overall majority, about 3 busloads of boot-ass grunts getting shipped over there to 62 area, San Mateo, and dropped off on the parade deck. And then you get off the bus, they start calling out, names, this company, names, this company. And that's how it went. And it was right before Labor Day in 93. So we got there, I think that Thursday or that Friday. So we got off and we had a 72 or 96. I forget which one it exactly was, but you're in those low-rise, flat-top barracks, which they eventually separated into 4-man rooms. But that was it. It was no joke. Back then, all the senior lance corporals were pretty psyched to see you because you were the boot and they weren't, and they were gonna let you know it every time.
Yeah, it does suck being the brand new guy at a unit, and you're like, man, I can't wait till someone else shows up, because it doesn't even matter if you get promoted to lance or whatever, you're still the newest guy in the unit, so you're doing all the bullshit. You're like, fuck, man, one PFC, just show up.
That's all pretty much happened after that. I think we had a couple dumps of 2 or 3 would come to our company, and that was it. Yeah. And then and I got promoted to lance pretty early because I had the delayed entry program and a little bit of college underneath my belt. So I got there a month later. I got lance corporal. But it was funny because after the promotion ceremony, all the other lance corporals were like, oh, "This doesn't mean shit. You're still a boot." Typical. Typical Marine crap, man. Typical, but
everybody's boot to somebody,
I know, that's it, and that's exactly what. And you don't forget it.
So what were you guys training to do in '93? What was on 3.5's plate at the time?
At the time, we were getting ready to go onto a MEU the following spring. So I showed up to Lima 3.5 in was it late August, early September of '93. And then they were scheduled to go on float that May of '94. And we were our company, Lima Company, was a boat company, not a boat company, a AAV company. So we were tracks. So when we trained for the MEU, we trained on tracks. And that's where we were starting to do workups, the whole deal for McCrests and all that stuff, just doing workups.
Dude, I've never ridden in a track. I somehow went 12 years and did 2 MEUs and never rode in a track. And with that recent tragedy, where they lost all those dudes as Marines and corpsmen, it's like, man, and it's funny because it's not funny, but guys would joke about man, if one goes down, ha ha ha, it's that sick humor where you're like, fuck, I hope this doesn't really happen. You know what I'm saying? We joke about it, but
when you launch that AAV actually goes underwater briefly and then pops back up, and of course it's leaking. You got leaks everywhere. And there's a bilge. I'm assuming that's bilging the water out, but and the moment you surface and kind of settle out, they pop the top hatches so you can get air cover. And I'm assuming for safety. I'm not sure the whole reason, but you're pretty happy when they pop those hatches because you're in that metal box. I could imagine what those Marines went through. Although from what I read, those doors were open and they kind of capsized and whatnot and went under from there. But they pack you in very tight. There's like a squad goes into an AAV. and it's packed, and all your packs are in there. They're not on the outside, and nothing's all in you. So
Yeah, and I think actually, I don't think they got the doors open. I think
they didn't. Okay.
one of the crewmen got out, or one of the guys got out and tried to open it, but the handle, when he went to turn it, turned. It was spinning, but it wasn't actually disengaging the lock.
Maintenance.
So they were. Yeah, it was a maintenance thing.
Man,
it was a complete. That's why it was completely like preventable kind of situation.
Yeah.
And man, it's one of the guys was saying they heard the dudes praying in the AAV as they were escaping it, and I was like, oh my god, dude, like that's just. I can't imagine. You know what a horrible thing to do. And I've heard they're nothing but a shitty ride. Like it's rough on land. It sucks in the water because it's sketchy.
I mean, I guess it's better than humping. I mean, I couldn't imagine humping from Kuwait to Baghdad, but we rode AVs and that.
That'd be fucking.
But
miserable.
it's not a fun ride at all. It's smoke, everything. It's just brutal. But it could be worse, I guess.
Yeah. Did you end up going on that deployment? I mean, you were in for 3 years as an enlisted guy.
I was in. Yeah, in March of '94, I got in a vehicle accident. A buddy of mine, we were, on a date with a couple women from North Orange County, and we were driving back one night, and he hadn't been drinking, but I was asleep, and he fell asleep at the wheel, and we flipped he had a big kind of 4x4 Ford Ranger, big wheels, going south on I-5, there in around Mission Viejo, going through that area. And we flipped it, and he got ejected. I kind of got ejected. None of our dumbasses had seatbelts on, So we're both lucky to be alive. Period. So that kind of put a damper on my deployment. I had a broken fibula, I had a punctured lung, contusions, the whole gambit. I was spitting up blood, the whole deal, and
damn, dude.
So basically, I was instantly non-deployable. Battalion commander, company commander, platoon commander shows up and. Hey, thanks, but you're gonna be not deployable. Nothing we can do about it. It is what it is. But
yeah, for sure.
So
what's that feeling like when you? I mean, were you conscious for this entire wreck or something? I've never been in that. Yeah, I've actually had 0 car accidents, so I have no idea what it's like.
Knock on wood, because I said that.
Knock on wood, baby. Oh God, I'm not leaving my house today.
But I was asleep, but I remember waking up in it and just the loud noise and the pain. And I remember when it stopped on its side. So it flipped over, but then it stopped on its side, and whoever passerbyers drugged me out. And I remember trying to stand up, and then my leg broke, but I didn't know it. So it broke, and that fibula went through the skin. So it was a compound fracture at that point. And I remember just rolling around the ground in pain and telling them to give me some drugs. And the medics, the paramedics, can't do that yet. But finally got me to the hospital, at Mission Hospital there in Orange County, and then I was in ICU for a few days. So
that has to be like a weird sensation when you go to try to walk, but your leg's broken and you don't even know it. Like man,
it was.
I've never broken a bone either, so I don't even know what that's like. God, man, knock on wood again.
I know that's a tough one to break. But by I think it was April of '94, I then went over to 1-5, Alpha Company 1-5, and then I was light duty for 4 or 5 months as my leg heals, and I was getting better, just doing light duty nonsense at a company level, which is always just fire watch, all that crap, and then finally it's getting better, and then I'm starting to train more. They take me off light duty, and at this point I'm a team leader for a fire team leader. Doing well, and then I guess I still wasn't 100% perfect because I started favoring one leg over the other and limping more, not on the broken leg, but on my opposite knee. And one time we were at a live fire range. It was a fire team live fire range. Battalion commander's watching, and I'm leading the fire team, but I'm limping doing it. And afterwards, he's like, "Hey, good job, but why are you limping?" I told him, he's like, "Yeah, we can't have you out here limping like that for obvious reasons, a safety or it is what it is." And I tried to suck it up as much as I could, but eventually the medical said, "Look, you can do a lap move to some non desk job more or less, or you can get out and go to college." And so I got out and went to college. I ended up getting out in I think it was '95, September of '95. I got out from a med board with like 10% disability, I guess, but that was it. I tried to stay in, and I couldn't. But from that moment, when I was out, I instantly started college there in Orange County. So,
did you get out and use your GI Bill?
Oh yeah, I used back then. It wasn't the it was the Montgomery GI Bill. It
Yep.
wasn't the good post 9/11 GI Bill now. So all I got was a little bit of a living stipend, $500 a month, and that was roughly about it. I think it helped a little bit for, to rent a room, because I was living by myself, or renting. I had roommates and stuff like that in college, and that helped with that. So
Does
and
that did the Montgomery GI Bill fully cover the books, or was it a set
it was
money
no,
amount?
it didn't cover tuition. It didn't cover book. It might have covered books if I didn't have to have. Regardless, it gave me I think it was $500 a month, 550, and
That's
you could
it.
use that on tuition, or you could use it on book. Yeah, it was nothing.
Oh,
And,
I thought you were saying 550 in addition to tuition.
no,
Jeez.
no, you didn't get any of that. They didn't pay for my tuition, nothing like that. You had to pay for your own
Wow.
tuition. They just give you a little bit of a help, and I used it to help with $550 a month for a room, and then whatever that helps out with, and that's all it was. So
Damn, man, we're
a lot
spoiled
different than
now.
I know post 9/11. I got my master's on post 9/11. That's great, but
That's
yeah,
crazy. I paid into the Montgomery GI Bill. It was ending when I first came in, and it
okay,
was one of those
yeah.
things like in boot camp where they're like, "Hey,
You better do it.
everyone's automatically signed up for the GI Bill. You need to let us know if you want to opt out." And like two or three guys
Okay.
raised their hands, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they were like, "You're idiots. Don't do this. Is
I
like
know.
free money.
Don't give
Don't
it
do
up."
it."
Yeah.
And I think one of
stuff.
them was like, "All right, I'll keep it." And two of them still opted out, or maybe only one
Yeah.
of them did. But it's like, dude, you idiot, And then it
Yeah,
switched
it
when
was
it switched to the post 9/11 GI Bill. For those that don't know, that may not be in the military, that is full tuition covered for whatever the most expensive state school is. So here in California, it'd be UC Berkeley. So whatever that tuition amount is, they will pay up to that amount. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of colleges like USC and some of these other like private schools have a program called the Yellow Ribbon Program where they make up the difference. So if you want to go to
wow.
USC and that's $50,000 a year, the GI Bill will cover like $20,000 because that's what I think somewhere around that to go to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And then the Yellow Ribbon Program through USC
rest.
pays that other $30,000.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
actually a really good program. Plus we get the basic allowance for housing, the BAH,
Right.
based on the zip code.
Oh,
So
man,
you
I
just look
know.
up the zip code, and it's for sergeant with dependents, I think, or maybe something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like
So-
the E5 with like a couple dependents or something from
I tell so many. I try to say it as much as I can on this podcast. I heard a statistic a couple weeks ago. It was like only 15% of veterans use their GI Bill. I'm like, that's insane, man. With the amount of benefits, the amount of things that you could do with that, even if you have like a career, you can use that money to go to a community college and learn how to work on your car better. You can use that money to learn how, like all these simple tasks.
Yeah. It's
So-
it's. I mean, I used it for like my master's program. It was great, and I mean, you can't complain about that program, and well deserved
man.
as well. So.
That's awesome. That's legit. I hope more people hear this and get out and use their GI Bill. So when you
it's-
started college, were you planning on going to college and going back into the Marine Corps?
It had been in the back of my mind. I was like, you know what? It's a broken leg. It was a easy break for whatever reason. I still wasn't completely healed, and I thought about going back in. And I also thought about the federal law enforcement type track as well. So I ended up going to college. Graduated from Cal State Fullerton there in Orange County, and in 2000. But before that, I was trying to apply. And I was going to the officer selection officer, the OSO, which is basically, as you know, the officer recruiter. And so I was going through him, and he put my packages in for OCS, and he was a problem with something there. And finally, about 2 months before I graduated, he figured it out. Is that, look, you're still technically a disabled vet with 10%, and you got to get off of that. So I was like, what do you want me to do? He's like, you need to go to the VA and get off of it. I was like, great, the VA? Nothing happens fast at the VA.
No.
And so I went down to, he gave me some paperwork, and I went down to Long Beach Veterans Hospital. Went there to their orthopedic, and I talked to a doctor, and he's like, hold on, you're here to get off disability? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm trying to go back in the Marine Corps as an officer, and they won't let me because I'm technically still on, just 10% disabled vet. He's like, he made me take a X-ray. He looked at it, signed it off right there. Fastest I've ever dealt with the VA in anything. In fact, he said he told me, he was like, I've never had anybody come here to get off a disability.
Yeah, everybody's
I was
like,
like,
oh man, I
I
scratched
know.
my arm one time in '94. You know, like
50%, I know. And so he signed it there, went home, and I gave it to the OSO. And 2 months later, in June of 2000, I was in Quantico at OCS for 10 weeks.
were you like when you were getting ready to like do the paperwork? Were you like, do I really want to do this again? Like, do you have like a come to Jesus moment where you just had to like,
No,
okay, for real, we're doing
I think I
this?
was ready. I was like, it wasn't out of my system. Of course, you think, is this right? But it wasn't out of my system. I still had the Marine Corps in my system, and I
Mm-hmm.
still wanted to. I hadn't finished it, hadn't gotten what I wanted out of it yet, and that's why I pushed forward. I went through the selection process for the Secret Service, but I ended up going to the Marine Corps instead because even the Secret Service was like, look, you get out after 4 years of your commitment as an officer, you can apply then to the Secret Service. So you should go that route as well. It's a good idea. So I ended up going back in the Marine Corps in 2000.
Did it make you nervous going in as an officer knowing that you can't choose your own job? Like, fuck,
Yeah,
here we go. I
it
wonder
was.
what I could be.
But the OSO wasn't very. He was kind of cagey about that. He had meant I was like, well, I want to go infantry. He's like, yeah, I can guarantee you ground. I'm thinking, we didn't say infantry ground, so ground can mean supply. It can mean comm. It can mean anything. It can also mean infantry or tanks or ground intel, but it just means non-flight or non-law. So
Yeah.
you can go into the law contract, a air contract, or ground, and that's what I got. So, and as you probably have heard, you compete for MOS slots in the basic school. After you graduate OCS and you go over to the basic school for 6 months, you compete for those slots, and it's all broken up into thirds. You have the top third, middle third, and bottom third, and they break up all the MOSs into those thirds called the quality spread, so that you don't have all the super motivated officers or second lieutenants up in the first third and a bunch of turds maybe in the bottom third. I don't know. There's a reason behind it, and so I was in the basic school, and I was at the bottom of the top third. So, and combat MOS is at the bottom of the top third, are hard to come by. But my platoon commander, they call them staff platoon commanders, he pushed for me at least to get a combat MOS, and that's when I got artillery.
Nice, man.
So.
That's cool. Yeah, there's some mixed reviews, I think it's mostly from the people that got kind of shafted by being, at the bottom of the top third or something like that,
Yep.
Yeah. I get it. I get the quality spread too, because you don't want because I'm sure everyone's motivated and there's a lot of people wanting infantry right out of OCS. So there'd be a lot of people, a lot of really good dudes in infantry, but now your supply sucks because, all the guys that can't.
It's what legit. I mean, who knows? There's all kinds of air supply. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. But I knew a lot of officers there who didn't want to have anything to do with combat MOS. So they wanted to, go and do what they do, and good on them. Somebody's got to do it. So,
yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Just like when I was go ahead.
I was just gonna say my personal views. I wanted in the Marine Corps both as enlisted and as an officer. Is I wanted to be at least a combat MOS, and that's why I went into the Marine Corps. So that's what I pushed for.
It's weird for guys that went in that like, hey, I'm joining the Marines because it's the Marines, and I'm I want to get into a combat MOS, to talk to people that join but don't want to do combat MOSs. Like I knew guys when I was a mechanic that loved it. That's all they wanted to do, and that's why they joined. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I guess I don't know why you would want to be like a mechanic here when you could go do it out in the real world. But
or you can go to the Army and be a mechanic, and you get a lot more benefits. I think after you get out. I think from what I've heard at least. But yeah,
it's it's hard. There's a they told me about it when I first got there, where there's a program where you go down to like the education center, and they may have this still, I don't know. You go down to the education center and you tell them like, hey, I want to sign up for it's almost like an apprenticeship program is what it was for mechanics. And you would get these documents, and every day you would go to work and you do your stuff, and you're supposed to have your supervisor sign off on your hours and what you worked on. And over time that all tracked. But if you did the math, it was like 4,000 hours for different tasks. And it's like, dude, it would take me forever to do any. I mean, granted, if someone's out there and they're planning on being a mechanic and they're going to stay as a mechanic, might as well do it because that's what you want to do. But I didn't want to do that, so I didn't participate.
Choice. Nothing against that. I mean, but because a lot of people told me, it's like, why are you going to infantry? How are you gonna get a job afterwards? It's like I'm not joining the Marine Corps to get a job afterwards. Although it might have been short-sighted on my belief, although it ended up working out well, and that's you all make choices and you got to stick with them, I guess.
I think that's a thing that people have to really think about too, and you're going to come out. There's a lot of people that get lied to by MCCS and everyone else that's still in the Marine Corps that hasn't actually got out yet, that are like, hey man, your leadership skills are going to be marketable in the real world. Yeah. Like, dude, there's so many leaders out there. They need you to have like actual hard skills. That's really cool to say that I led 400 dudes on whatever, but no one cares unless you show the tangible stuff. And infantrymen can get out and do things. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. There's no infantry out there, so you have to be open-minded. Use your GI Bill to go get some job training.
You got to be creative. Like I went into a kind of a Alpha 1-5 reunion last week, and one of the officers I was with during the invasion was, I mean, he was a platoon commander. He got out as a lawyer. I mean, he didn't get out as a lawyer. He got out, went to college. He got his law degree, and then he became a lawyer. I mean, it is what you make out of it. And you already go in as at least an officer, as you have some type of degree, whether it's from DeVry or whatever, but it's what you make out of it, and that's any personal choice in my view.
Networking and getting those tangible skills. I think I'm gonna do some series of podcasts, some like 10 to 15 minute videos that just discuss education benefits, so people kind of understand what they should be doing and what's available to them. Because if you spend even just 4 years, over that time, you can go down to the education center and get a couple things. You may not go down and get a degree. You maybe only take a couple classes. Maybe you go in and get a certification for some stuff. But I took classes for 2 years when I knew I was going to get out my last 2 years, and because of that, I just graduated a week ago, and I still have enough. Thank you. I appreciate it. I still have enough credits or enough GI Bill benefits left over that I can go either finish a master's or at least get a really good chunk of it paid for, And that's kind of the key for stuff like that. And there's definitely, I was a JTAC, a forward observer. There's no JTACs and forward observers in the real world, unless you want to go be a government contractor, which can be lucrative.
Most of those that's dying off too.
I don't know, man. I'll be honest. I've been out since 2018, and I get a call or an email probably at least once a month or every 2 months about contract jobs for either instructor jobs here in the States or overseas weird jobs. Going and getting into other shit, which I don't want to mess with.
Yeah, I was thinking about this when I got out. It was the contract was big. It's actual contractors guarding embassies or guarding.
Really?
CIA, all that stuff was still pretty big.
Yeah, that's true.
And I thought a lot of that had died down, especially as other companies come in. But I could be wrong.
I think a lot of them have, but I think as we start pulling out of like Afghanistan and stuff like that, I think we're going to see contracts go up for different places.
You're probably right.
So you're in again. Now you're an officer. TBS is done. You're going to Fort Sill. You find out you're going to become a artillery officer.
Yeah, I was in.
Were you pumped about that or?
I wanted to be an infantry officer, but I was glad that, and in the end, I think I got the best deal out of it compared to towards the end. If I look at everything back in my career, I'm glad it happened the way it happened. I wasn't happy at the time when they told us, and I was pretty upset. But I was trying to make deals with other officers, but I had a couple of officers that were in the bottom third, like, I'll switch with you, but they weren't in the top third, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so I was at Fort Sill, and that's when September 11th happened too. And I was there at a walk and shoot. I was happy. At that time, I was like, look, I'm going to go to the fleet. Anything happened. But back then, before 9/11, it was all, you're going to do a MEU, and you might land somewhere. You never know, right? But I was in Fort Sill for September 11th, and we were on a walk and shoot there at one of the ranges. And it was at Blockhouse Hill or whatever that impact ranges they have. And our class was doing a walk and shoot. And that's when we found out about a couple of airplanes crashed got crashed purposely into the Pentagon, into the World Trade Centers, and one went down in Pennsylvania. And then obviously, as you know, everything changed from there drastically. We had some foreign officers with us who immediately got detained and put under guard because they were from Saudi. They were from Saudi Arabia and Syria, and I think maybe a couple. I forget what other country, Egypt maybe. But right then they got put under guard.
That sucks. That sucks because I don't know. I mean, how was the relationship with them in the class? I've heard guys work with Middle Eastern guys in the States that are good and bad.
They seem pretty good. I mean, they kind of walk you through if they're not doing the math. If they kind of hold your hand and walk through the course, because a lot of these, some of these countries, if they fail that course, they can't. It's almost a threat to their life if they go back to their country. Look, we failed this course. They disgraced their country, and it's a threat. So they kind of hold, not like European, but Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia. There's some of it's a threat to their life, and I think somebody in the past had been brutally beaten or worse, and so the U.S. Military now kind of helps a lot of them through these courses.
I've actually heard that too.
Yeah, so they hold their hand, kind of go through the course, okay, and push them through. But there was a good relationship as much as you can. I know we had a couple balls with them, and the funny thing is they brought escorts. It was obvious
oh my God.
too. Yeah, you know, these foreign students with these extremely attractive and professional women on their arm at these balls with wives around. It's a debacle, but
that's funny.
It was funny nonetheless, you know.
That's some shit you would see in the Middle East, though. Like if you go to Dubai or something like that, there's definitely like a escort business out there that's flourishing. You know, in these Middle Eastern countries. It
was funny though, but that was it. But it was good with those officers. But during that day when we found out, they put them under security, and I don't know how long that lasted. I think they went home after that, and I could be wrong, but you know, that was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. But I remember they didn't stay around too long, if I recall, or they isolated them.
Were you pretty far along in the course when that occurred?
Yeah, well,
because it's about
really.
8 months, right? How's artillery?
Yeah, it's 6 months. It's 6 months.
Okay.
It might be like 5.5 months, but it's roughly half a year. And I showed up in July, and we graduated in December. And so we were about a third into it, I guess. Roughly, almost half, I guess, but into it. So.
How did your own mindset change? Were you like, holy shit, like we're at war now?
Yeah, you think this is it. I mean, what's going to happen now? Of course, civilian, my family, like my sisters, who, they don't know any difference. They call me, are you? I wouldn't answer. I wasn't answering the phone that night because I wasn't out. And are you gone? Are you going over there? Stuff like that. They didn't know how slow actually the military can work. But they're asking, are you going over there today, this week? Stuff like that. But other than that, you're like, this is it. This is business. And you kind of have that mindset, especially as a Marine. But what was interesting is our class, overwhelming majority of our class was West Point graduates, because we started in July. Obviously, West Point graduates in May or June, I guess, whatever it is. So an overwhelming percentage of our class were obviously Army, but also mostly West Point graduates. I mean, nothing against them, but there were some shenanigans going on with our platoon with half of those officers, and our Marine instructors kind of laid down the law the next day, like, look, you're going to be pointing at them specifically. You're going to be fighting these wars. You better get your head on the straight. You better be professional and listen up, because you're going to be out there into the fleet before you know it, or whatever the Army calls it, out there in operation forces, and behoove you to pay attention and mature. This isn't college anymore, and so it was straight, and he was right. And there was some, not all of them, but there was some. It was like, dude, you better wise up, man. This is serious, and obviously it was.
Were any of your instructors in like the Gulf War?
No. They were not. Maybe there might have been some major or colonels there, but we didn't. If there were, we didn't know about it. They didn't mention it. They were all 4 or 5 years ahead of us. At that point. As captains.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking, never mind.
They're on their B bill. There might have been some major lieutenant colonel in charge of it, or maybe some staff NCOs there that within the Marine component of the instructors, but not if they did, we didn't know about it.
Yeah. So when you were heading to the fleet, were you? Now, a lot of times I'll ask people when they're finishing up their MOS school, like, hey, is there one unit you wanted to go to over another? Was there like a reputation? And a lot of people don't know because they're new guys. They're like, hey, we're just wanting to get to a unit. At that time, there had to have been some kind of like talk about what units were going to be deploying and this and that. So were you guys trying to like work your way into those units, or were there guys trying to work their way out of those units?
No, I don't know. I knew. I mean, even before going to Fort Sill, I knew I was going West Coast. Now, as my duty station. This is after I found out my MOS. As an artillery officer. If you're going West Coast, and great, and that meant either 29 Palms with 311, 3rd Battalion, 11th Marines, or 11th Marines at Camp Pendleton. And so once I got that, I didn't complain. I was ready to go 211 because 1 MEF or 1st Marine Division, Iraq was their AO, was their area of operations responsibility, versus 2nd Marine Division had different Africa and South America, stuff like that. But it was all we knew that was the 1st Marine Division, the 1 MEF's AO. So we knew that if anybody's going to go initially, it's going to be, 1st Marine Division. So, and that's what we were being told. Of course, Iraq wasn't nothing. It was all Afghanistan at the time. But you knew that, Afghanistan was still part of, I think, 1 MEF at the time as well. And we just knew at that point, you're more likely to go if you're with 1 MEF versus 2 MEF, or MEF meaning Marine Expeditionary Force. For listeners who don't know, so.
Yeah, man. So when you get there, now like, hey, man, this is for real. Like, we're gonna be getting ready. These are the dudes I'm probably gonna go to combat with.
Yeah,
that's got to be tough. It's already got to be tough to show up to a unit as a 2nd lieutenant because you know all the stories, especially you coming from the enlisted side. Well, maybe that made it easier, but no one wants to hear from the 2nd lieutenant.
Well, I showed up. I graduated in December of 2001, and we had about 30 days off. I showed up. I had an apartment already in Orange County. They're just north of base, and but I was had a month roughly off. But I called our adjutant, the S1, and kind of just check in with 211 because I was going to 211. He's like, look, you don't have to check in now, but if you want to come down and get some information, feel free to just put some camis on and come down. So I did that. I threw some camis on. I'm a motivated, hard charging, 2nd lieutenant. You want to get going. So that's what I did. I went down there, and I didn't want to necessarily check in, but I wanted to kind of see what was up and kind of introduce myself. And so I went down there and talked to the XO of 211 and the adjutant, and then the XO. He's like, well, this is what we got going on. With 211, Echo batteries here, Fox batteries here. Kilo 312, which is those go. They're here, etc. Gulf batteries overseas, but Fox battery just got tasked to support support 1-5 to go to Tajikistan for air base security. And now, as you probably know, batteries usually support certain battalions, especially on MU rotations. And Fox battery is always supporting 1-5. Gulf supported, I don't know, 3-5, whatever the case is. But Fox battery 211 was always had that habitual relationship with 1-5. And he told me they're tasked to be attached to 1-5. They're not going to go as artillery. They're going as provisional infantry. I was like, boom. I was like, can I go there if they need a lieutenant? He's like, you want to go? Of course. I want to go. 2nd lieutenant, get into the fleet. I don't want to stay home after we've been attacked. The whole deal. And so we were supposed to go to Tajikistan for air base security. The only thing I knew about Tajikistan was that old movie, Spies Like Us, I think it was. And
I've never
they
seen
mentioned,
that.
It's with Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd. Anyway, and they kind of go into the Soviet Union, and Tajikistan back then was a satellite nation of the Soviet Union, and they mentioned the road to Dushanbe, which is on the border, and Dushanbe was the area in which we were supposed to be going in Tajikistan. And
that's funny.
But we obviously. So then what I do, I check in off leave. And then we did training with them, started showing up at some formations. I think it was once or a couple times. And then before you know it, it got canked. We weren't going for whatever reason. We had advanced party already going over there. One of the officers in Fox battery was actually had some language experience with Russian. And although Tajik speak Tajik, a lot of them knew Russian just because of the Soviet Union and the occupation. So they went over there, and they came back, and we obviously didn't end up going.
That's lame. That's got to be a bummer when you think, especially when your advanced parties over there setting the groundwork already.
It's typical Marine Corps, you never know. And so they came. So we ended up going. We started training up. We didn't know what was going on. We knew a lot of things were happening around the world because of 9/11. But you just keep going. Then what happened? Bam! You got a couple CACs coming up. That's how.
Back to training. Back to the guns.
That's it.
Like, you guys thought you were infantrymen? Get back on the guns. What are you doing?
No. You got maintenance. You haven't shot these in a while. You got to do safety tests again. Stuff like that. So
when you went back to being like a traditional battery, what was your role in the battery?
FO, like mini. I was an FO, and I was an FO for the whole year because we knew we were going to go with 1-5 to the 31st MU after Tajikistan got canked. We were then set to go to 1-5 in February of 2003 or January 2003. So we just started doing workups with them, and I got attached to Alpha Company was my company, and working with their FIST team and commanding officer and all their Marines. And we started working with them as they did their workups as well, and then we had to do our own artillery workups as required as well.
It's interesting how not every 2nd lieutenant really gets a lot of FO time. or any. Some of them don't get any really, depending on what the battery's doing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Did you and the guys that get almost too much FO time almost get harassed on the back end, and it can almost be bad for their career because they want you to be on the guns as much as possible.
Exactly. I kind of saw it. I didn't see it at the end, but it was completely different because I had a whole year. I did 3 CACs deployments, one of them with 1.5 and 2 just to support units who are doing the CACs rotation, which is the predecessor to Mojave Viper. And I'm not sure, what do they do now? Is it still Mojave Viper, or is it changed?
It was EMV. Then I don't know what they do. It was enhanced Mojave Viper, and there's something else now.
So we were still doing CACs back then, and so we did multiple, which actually, to be honest with you, they were painful. But as an FO, it forced you to do the hard, not just adjust and fire for effect, suppression of enemy air defense, all that stuff into a timeline with air and land and ground, and it forced you to do the hard work, and it was really helpful. And in the end, before going into Iraq, I was really grateful. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I could have been in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time, because I was there for a year with the unit I was going to be deployed with in my job, my MOS, and I got a lot of experience in FO working with them and my own FO team, and especially the Marines the infantry Marines and the leadership. That was great. I couldn't have. I was just lucky. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but I was lucky to be there instead of having to just show up right before they move and to never meet you before and any of that stuff. So it was. I was pretty happy. I was just lucky. I could have planned it better if I wanted to do it.
For sure. And being an FO, I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot more to it than people give credit. It's like there's more than just an adjust fire mission or a fire for effect mission. Like, when some of the skills and stuff that you learn there are pretty invaluable, and it's something you have to do all the time. Which if you don't, like the range estimation and stuff like that, you can be really off. I don't know.
It's just the process, the whole deal, especially integrating that with the infantry and teaching them what artillery can and can't do. It's a lot. Of course, you go back to the artillery battalion and the master guns thinks, well, you kind of once you step up to do other stuff in the battery as opposed to the lowly FO. I get it. It's not being an XO at all. It's not being an FDO at all, being an FO, but regardless, it's important supporting the Marine on the ground, and I was glad to do it.
It's just an interesting job. Yeah, it's a fun job.
It is. It's different.
It gives you a better appreciation for the geometries of fire and understanding like the battlefield and the map reading and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I always really enjoyed it and stuff. It was such a good time.
I know. And then you switch off to when I became a JTAC and have a FIC team with ANGLICO and all. It culminated in to make me a better officer, at least at a FIC team level. Just my whole experience, especially combat experience, calling in artillery and all that stuff, and I couldn't have planned it better. So I was happy.
It's pretty legit. At what point did you find out, like, hey, we're going to Iraq now? Like this for real though, like for the invasion?
There were whispers of it basically in the fall. Our infantry battalion, like, look, it's looking like we're going. But we're still scheduled to go to Okinawa, but. So there was a unit over there that was scheduled to come back, and actually, and I haven't heard one of your other interviewees, I guess, from 1.5 had mentioned as well, is that unit we were supposed to replace, that BLT was supposed to come back. Their advanced party came back. Our advanced party for the BLT went over to Okinawa, and then all that got changed. They had to go back, and then ours had to be recalled in January of 2003 because we got tasked to go to Iraq, and they had tasked to stay in Okinawa for a year.
God, they had to have been pissed.
Oh, they were. I had one of my good friends that I went to the basic school and artillery school with. He was stuck over there, and I didn't really talk to him about it much, but it was obvious. I mean, that would just be away from your family, for one, if you're married, and then to have to watch the invasion on the TV while you're sitting over there in Okinawa.
Morale's at an all-time low.
Yeah, to me it would have been demoralizing to deal with that.
Yeah, it's and that's, I guess people that haven't been in the military or something like that, it'd be hard to understand. Like, why would you want to go be in the invasion? But it's like, hey, dude, you want to go get into the fight. We're not here to just practice.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you want to do that? Well, I joined the Marine Corps for a reason necessarily. If there's a reason we're going to go, I want to be part of the push, the initial push, or any of it. I want to deploy. I didn't join the military to sit in the States.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be the guy that was in the military that didn't get to go do the deployment. And it sucks. And it sucks for the guys. There's people listening to this probably that happened to, even all the way. I knew guys in 2007, 2008 when there was a tons of deployments going on that did 4 years and never got to deploy because timing, it just didn't work out. It wasn't anything they did. It was just timing,
I also recall, I think around that time, 04, 05, 06, and this is all just be scuttlebutt, but then hearing out that there was DOD was looking for, or at least the Marine Corps portion of the Pentagon was looking for, who are those who haven't deployed, who are sitting at some PX warrant officer in Okinawa that hasn't deployed, whatever the case is, and they started finding these individual augments you haven't deployed in 5 years to anything, and there was some then pulling these individuals out that they weren't hiding and sliding necessarily. They just, that was what happened.
There's definitely some people that are hiding out, but there's definitely a lot of people that just timing didn't work
unlucky.
out.
They wanted to go.
I remember I was going on my second MEU, and this was my 5th deployment, and it was my last deployment, and there was a gunny, and we were wearing chucks for some reason, and there was some gunny that came in, and this dude had like 5 ribbons. I think he did he had 0 deployments. This was going to be his first deployment.
Yeah,
and I'm like, how is
happens? Yeah.
This is in 2000. This was in 2016.
Yeah.
How does that happen? That you made it all the way to gunny and that many years and not even go to Okinawa or something? Didn't even have an Okinawa ribbon, I don't think.
Yeah, that must be an odd MOS or something that you just gets. I don't know. I've heard those before, but I don't know how that happens. So
I knew a guy. There was a guy on my last deployment that was a brig guard. He worked in the brig. And those guys don't deploy. He's like, bro, I'm going to look like a fucking war hero when I get back to the brig and show up with like deployment ribbons and
stack.
Like, what is that? Yeah. What are all those things? Yeah. He's like, that's something we just don't get to do. And I was like, oh, that really sucks, man.
Are they part of like PMO or what? I guess is that an MOS?
It's its own MOS. Yeah, custody, some kind of custody. I don't know. But I mean, I guess those are the guys that would get called up if there was like during the invasion. I'm sure there was a bunch there that took care of POWs.
Enemy POWs.
In 2016, this dude was a staff sergeant, so he had only been, I don't know, but he was saying there's just not very many deployments for him at the time. But anyway, you got yours, and did you guys float over, or did you guys fly over?
No, we flew. It was like February 2nd, 2003. I flew over there with 211. Mill and I, we took that. What is that? Omni Air out of March Air Force Base.
Omni Air, baby.
Omni Air, and we flew out of there in the middle of the night. Went through, we landed in Bangor, Maine, and I think we did a straight shot from Bangor, Maine into Kuwait, but we could have stopped in Germany or something just to refuel. I forget, but, got there in Kuwait, and it was morning, and they had these buses for us. And at that point, we were pretty early. A lot of units hadn't deployed yet over there, or they were floating over. Whatever the case is, the Army was doing their own thing, and we landed in Kuwait City, and we got on these buses, and they had paper up on the windows. They put paper up, like brown paper, so you couldn't see in, and or we couldn't see out, or whatever the case was. And then we got escorted by U.S. Army. I think they were MPs, escorted out to the middle of the desert to a place called LSA 5, and they're all designated by 5th Marines and or RCT 5, Regimental Combat Team 5. Will be here, LSA 5, and then there was like a LSA 7, a LSA, whatever 2, or whatever the case was. So we hit there, we showed up, they dropped us off, and there was a couple tents and some porta-johns, but that was it. And you kind of drug them and you kind of wait, and then other units started showing up. 1-5 showed up, other 5th Marine units, headquarters units, armored started showing up. Then they started unloading the prepositioned ships from the port there in Kuwait, and driving all that equipment out to the desert. We sat there for. Go ahead.
I was going to say, was it you getting there and the buildup? Was it a lot slower than you expected it would be?
No, maybe I didn't think about it like that. I guess I was surprised that there wasn't anybody there when we showed up to LSA 5. There might have been a few tents that were occupied by someone, but we were the biggest unit there for a couple days until 5th Marines proper started showing up, and then you had the other, enablers, tanks and LAVs and et cetera started showing up. that were going to be part of RCT5, and then of course the logistics portions, whatever they call those.
As you guys got this gear and all this stuff, and you're starting to prep, were you like identifying a lot of like, oh man, this is an issue. Were there issues to be ironed out, or were you guys pretty much ready to go?
As an FO, I didn't see that. There might have been on the battery side, or the armor side and equipment. But there, once the AAV showed up and we got detached from 211, then attached to 15, there might have been issues showing up with the AAVs. But if there was, I didn't hear about it. So we were just there, keeping busy, training, doing that, and just preparing and hoping that it happened. Because back then, we weren't sure it was even going to happen. We thought it might have been a big pump fake. We didn't know what was really going to go on. I think back at the time, the administration at the time had given Saddam Hussein, so many hours to get out at some point as they built up. And that was closer to the invasion, but we weren't even sure what we were going to do. We thought we were going to go to sit in the desert for 6 months and then go home.
Be used as a tool for diplomacy.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, when did it become apparent, like, holy shit, this is going to be real? This is like, was there stacks of artillery rounds, getting loaded up to 11th Marines? Was there?
Yeah, they were everything, just ammo. We started once we got closer in the middle. It was the evening of, I want to say May 9th or March 19th is when we actually invaded. But before then, we were at the LSA-5, and we'd go out for a week or two to go train, and most of it's just patrolling and shooting and just repetitive, training just to keep you sharp. And then we go back. But then at one point, we had a field day, field meet, I guess. It's not the field, not cleaning, but we kind of competition, and there was a talent show, that type of nonsense. And then early that next morning, we left to the assault positions, and basically, in the middle of the night, the XO for 15 had came in looking for the COs of the companies and the XOs of the companies, and pulled them to a meeting. Half an hour later, the XO for Alpha Company 15, Nate Scholl, came in and woke everybody up. Get your gear. We're leaving for good. Packed all our gear up, put it in the AVs, in the middle of the night. And we had a couple not lawyers, but reporters attached to us. Gordon Dillo from the Orange County Register, and him and his photographer, putting civilians through this stuff. And he was a Vietnam vet, but the photographer putting civilians through this, they're like, what's going on? We're like, Semper Gumby. We're not really sure. We're going out to we might go out there, we might come back. We don't know. Just get your gear. Let's go. Get in. And middle of the night, we went out there and loaded up and drove for half a day, or stopped for a few hours, slept, drove another half a day towards the berm. And
now when you guys were ready to go, when this was getting ready to happen, and it's like, holy shit, okay, this is happening. Did you see any, like, what was the feeling among everyone? I've seen guys getting ready to deploy that like almost broke down before they were getting ready to get on the bus, because they're like, holy shit, this is real. Yeah. Do I really want to do this? But they were fine afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it's that's an emotion that's tough to hold, but if there was, we didn't see it. And those Marines kept it to themselves pretty well if they did. However, a day or so before the actual invasion, they started shooting mortars and scuds at us, and they weren't very accurate. They're still shooting. At that point, we didn't know if it was going to be gas. We all had our MOP suits on. Once you give them the gas sign, we go into the AVs and button up and put all your equipment on. And we're sitting in those AVs in the dark with your mask on, everything, gloves, what is that, MOP 4 or MOP 1? I forget which one is higher, but your full MOP gear up. And MOP gear is the military for chemical. I forget the acronym for MOP, but basically all your chemical suits. And
I'm trying to think of it.
I don't want to embarrass myself anymore, but
something protective posture.
Yeah, I military operational protective something, some acronym. Like but
all the Seaburn guys out there are like, bastards.
How could you
never listened?
Didn't you go to my class? Come on.
Damn.
But we sat there, and there's a couple guys those two reporters with us. Gordon, he was a Vietnam vet. He sucked it up pretty well, but that reporter was like, I can't do this. Kind of, and rightfully so. It's claustrophobic. And I tell you, in my own head, I was like, don't freak out, because the Marines, Marines around you, and there, our FO teams, the comm guys, the FIS teams in there, the CO is in the CO hatch and the AV, and putting all that gear on there in the dark, and you can barely breathe. And you don't know if you're getting gas because they just shot some scuds that landed 1,000 meters away, you know, or something or worse, and then maybe shot some mortars. And then you hear artillery going off at the counter battery radar. And I mean, it wasn't just a couple guns like they do, you know, in 07 or 08, but this was a battalion fire for effect on a kind of battery radar. So it was boom, 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 boom. Just,
oh yeah,
it was really starting to ramp up. Then we're like, shit's getting real, really fast. And we knew it was. We think it was coming out, and we knew. I was like, we're not coming back. We're staying. At that point, we heard that Saddam had turned down, I think, George Bush's request for them. Okay, you leave. You and Uday and Qusay and Saddam was supposed to leave after 24 hours, whatever the case is. I forget the details, but they didn't leave, obviously. And then we feel it. Then we're waiting. Okay, give them the all clear. We're waiting. Some more counter battery. Then artillery started shooting off, even without us being all, mob postured up for whatever they got going on. But they were between us and the berm, shooting into Iraq, and a lot of it. It was pretty impressive. And I'll be honest, I was pretty happy to see that, because when I showed up to Alpha Company 1-5, a lot of people weren't sure. Our artillery can't keep up, or we'd rather have air. Fair enough. And so you're not really sure how any of these are going to operate in war, at least in combat. And I think at least for the invasion, artillery really stepped up and did it well. And just right there, they were just cracking shells and doing what they needed to do. And there was no waiting. Well, this is unsafe. A lot of that stuff kind of goes out the window. Not safety, but you know how it is. I mean, combat things change, obviously, and they were
you stop considering the 0.01% possibility that a round could hit somewhere and maybe hurt someone. You're like, fuck it, shoot over their heads. Fuck it,
especially when they're especially when they're shooting at you. You're getting counter battery radars popping off on where these Iraqis are shooting 120s at you from, and it's landing relatively close to Marines in the area. So it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's people hate on Arty, but fuck them. That's the only all-weather. It's the only all-weather weapon system like that. You're not going to get Harriers, or you're not going to get F-35s shooting through clouds. I think some of them have that radar system on them where they can do some shit like that. Yeah. But you're talking
drop a JDAM like that, but that was back then. They weren't, and nobody was going to call it in. We had 100,000 1 to 100,000 maps on us. Nobody's getting a 10-digit grid off of that, and especially if you're close. And but yeah, like artillery was the whole fight, especially during sandstorms and all that. They were just shooting.
Constant. They don't have to go back and get gas or anything. They're going to be sitting there just laying down rounds until they're out of rounds.
Yep, and there's some good stories of up going up. We can get into that later, but of these battalion, these batteries that were going up the different avenues of different MSRs to Baghdad. There was no big forward line of troops. It was just on the MSRs, and you'd stop for the night. Artillery has their sector of fire for security, and a couple times they actually drive or direct fired into some palm trees because some knucklehead Fedayeen or Iraqi soldiers thought it'd be a good idea to shoot at them. And they were could you imagine? Well, back then it was the M19 or 8. Yeah. But just direct fire into a palm grove, some date palms.
It's crazy. There's a video on. I think I put it on my Instagram at JKramer Graphics for those out there. Of some guys in Afghanistan.
You should get a bell whenever you do that. You should ding. You should get
ding. Just
ding whenever you say
Pavlov's dog.
People
are like, oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but there's a video. I think I put a video up forever ago of a battery shooting direct fire in Afghanistan up on a hillside. They've taken some fire.
That. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's fucking cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild. Where you can actually see. That's got to be good for Arty guys because they don't ever get to see the target. They're shooting at a distance and they sit down and continue eating their MREs or whatever gun bunnies do when they're sitting around the gun.
I know. Yep. Complain or whatever it is they do.
Complain, fight other gun crews.
I know.
So
go ahead.
The push starts, man. Let's talk about the push up into Iraq and what your guys' role was.
The go ahead was we left sooner than we were supposed to. So we were all officers at the meeting at the company level. We're at I think it was a battalion meeting with the CO, the battalion CO of 1-5, and all of us were there in a meeting. And it was not dark, but it was late afternoon. I think it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden we're getting a brief. So what's going on? All of a sudden, they're over the net. We're going now. And the battalion SEALs like, go get in your vehicles, and they had gotten word that General Mattis had then changed it. We were supposed to leave, I think maybe 12 hours later, but we didn't. Saddam started burning oil wells, started shooting a little bit more, and Mattis says, you know what, we're going now. And so he changed the whole timeline. And as you know, that changes up the ATO, the Air Tasking Order. So all those aircraft that were set to do this, this, and this, kind of been pushed off and kind of through the air wing for a loop there. And we're going to Hawaii. That's an issue later. But so we get in, we buckle up. I remember the company first sergeant, his name is, now he's a Sergeant Major Green, really good Sergeant Major. Now, first sergeant then, he's a really good man, good Marine. He came over to the FIST truck, or the FIST AAV, a fire support team, the AAV with the CO, and everybody's like, he's just telling me and the forward air controller and the FIST team leader and the mortars FO, keep them off us. Before you know, we button up, and 1-5 was the first Marine battalion to cross into Iraq. I think it was actually some tanks crossed first, so they blew the holes, or they reduced engineers reduced the barrier where we crossed. We buttoned up the AAVs, and this time it's dark. We crossed in. Our vehicle is the 7th vehicle into Iraq, for at least where we were at, for the Marine Corps. And we cross in, and as soon as we cross in, they start identifying targets, T-55 tanks, and I guess we don't even know if they were manned. But I think they were still warm. They're looking through the thermals. The tanks automatically ID them. I think they shoot. And if I remember correctly, do you remember the what are those? It's an assault weapon, not the Dragon or the TOW.
The Javelin?
The Javelin. They tried to shoot 2 Javelins at those tanks. Both were duds or misfires. And they're like 60K individual rocket or missile. And that didn't work. So tanks just blew them to hell. And then, because Alpha Company, that was their primary objective, was to secure a foothold right there. And then they let Bravo Company and Charlie Company pass through our lines. And then they went up to secure GOS, which are gas oil separation plants. And and they went on to their objectives in the middle of the night. And as we're going through, it's dark. In the distance, you see, they burning oil wells that they had lit on fire. Artillery's going off, shooting whatever it is down, on the hills. You see it. You see flak going in the air, shooting it. The Iraqis were shooting up just indiscriminately, I think, shooting in the air. And there could have been air up there. They couldn't. I don't know. But you see the tracers going up. This is everywhere. Just shooting randomly. And artillery's shooting back at different mortar positions or whatever the case is. And just throughout the night, the different battalion objectives get knocked down. Some resistance here or there, a little bit here and there, but not too much initially. And then before dawn, Alpha Company had an objective it's called the Pumping Station 2, whatever that is. It was basically they receive the oil and they pump it off to wherever to get refined. So there's large tanks, above ground storage tanks for crude oil. And that was our objective, or for at least one of our objectives. And before dawn, we're moving on it, and aircraft says, yeah, we see movement, we see trenches, and there's activity in those trenches. So the forward air controller dropped a couple 1,000-pound bombs in the trench line, and as we're moving up, I got a 10-minute suppression duration artillery from a battalion just on this whole trench line and in depth around this pumping station. And as we're getting closer, the company commander wanted another 5 minutes, so I extended it by 5 minutes, or at least I requested it. And then the battalion, approved it, and then the artillery battalion shot it, and about that time it's slowly starting to get light, and then that's when we moved on and the infantry started clearing some of these trench lines that were surrounding the pumping station.
Where did you guys find any enemy there? Was there any?
Oh yeah, we found bodies. We found some live Iraqis. One of them, there's a couple stories, is we're sitting there, the infantry gets out and starts clearing the trench line. We're watching the MSR, or basically the roads surrounding it. You just kind of, as a FIST team there, you're looking out, We called some other missions on some Iraqis that were further out from our area. But this time started clearing the trenches and finding some dead bodies, finding some wounded Iraqis, I believe. And now in the middle of nowhere, some Iraqi jumps on a motorcycle, pops out of a trench line, and starts driving away. And that whole company, at least those that were safe, just unloaded in this Iraqi. It was going down this, and they got him, but he didn't kill him, but he wrecked. Then they, like Marine fashion, once he was a non-threat, they went and treated him. Yeah. And then before you know it, continuing down on the time is 2 vehicles, 2 white SUVs, Range Rovers, or the case is Land Rovers, start coming down from west to east down a road going towards the pumping station, and it kind of took us by surprise. And all of a sudden, then the Marines started to open up on these vehicles, and they started shooting back. And so these Iraqi soldiers were in this vehicle, started shooting back at the lines, exchanging gunfire, and then they ended up, neutralizing both those vehicles. But unfortunately, as you probably heard from the other podcast that you gave earlier, is we had a lieutenant that was hit. Lieutenant Shane Childers, that was a platoon commander for the Alpha Company, was hit just below the SAPI plate, and was wounded in the stomach, and he bled out there and died. Yeah. And I know I know initially, like, well, how did they hit him? But a lucky shot, I guess, and got him under the SAPI plate. I know there was some talk about it might have been blue on blue, but I think afterwards, when they found out it wasn't an American round that hit him, it was a 7.62, but the Soviet variant. What is that? 7.62 by 39, or whatever the case is. The Soviet variant that they found in him, and it was an Iraqi round that had unfortunately killed him.
That sucks, man. So, that's the reality of war. That's like the unfortunate. Like, did you guys, before you stepped off, did you guys take like a platoon or company photo or anything like that? Because a lot of units do that before they go into a deployment, and we might have. You always wonder. I used to think about it like, I wonder if we're all going to be in this photo at the end. Like, are we all going to? And that's like a reality, that a lot of us think about before we're heading over. And unfortunately, obviously, it happens for some people. Casualties on both sides.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'll just say those reporters with us, Gordon Dillo and Mark Avery. Mark Avery's a photographer. He took a bunch of videos or a bunch of pictures, and he didn't have to, but at the end of the deployment, he gave a certain amount of the DVDs, 6 DVDs, all these thousands of pictures that he took from that whole deployment. And then, everybody made copies for other Marines or whatever the case is. And awesome. Shane, obviously Shane's in some of those pictures, mostly before we crossed. But so we do have a lot of pictures of that whole fight.
Yeah. Did were they kind of coming around to what was happening? The reporter and the photographer?
They were.
Or did the photographer not come with you?
No, he did. No, he ended up coming. But he was in his mode, his mode there of taking pictures constantly, especially during the daylight, and I think probably dealing with the issues that were going on by focusing on his job. And at that point, later on there were some funnier stories, but he was focusing there, and he wasn't an issue. He took a lot of pictures of stuff that, and I remember I go through them occasionally. I'm like, man, I forgot about that. I forgot about this. I forgot about him. I forgot about all these issues that he took pictures, just random pictures of MRE, just photographers take pictures of everything, and he did, and it was neat that he took that. And he was gracious enough to give us those pictures as opposed to holding on to these copyrighted pictures. I think
sure.
He didn't have to do that, and I think a lot of Marines were grateful for it. And him and Gordon were just. I talked to Gordon occasionally as it is, and I saw him at that reunion last week as well. But it was nice to have them with us, at least for posterity purposes.
That's awesome. I'll have to look him up see if he's on. Is he still a reporter?
He writes books now. He's no longer with Orange County Register, but he writes different books as well. But he's active out there. He writes.
Yeah, I'll have to look him up. Reach out to him sometime. What an interesting time to be a forward observer, though. Like, you're getting to do the missions, like the real world, like real life. Like, hey guy, hey you, Lance Corporal, do a fire mission. Here's this, and like. Yep. I don't know. It's crazy, right?
Like, it wasn't lost on me because I was 29. I turned 30 during that invasion, so I was older, and I've known that this stuff is historical good or bad, or whatever the case is. I knew that's
Yep.
not necessarily that what I was doing is historical, but just being a part of this whole invasion force was just historical.
Yeah.
And I knew enough of that to really appreciate it. And I have a journal from that whole first invasion. I didn't do for the other ones for whatever reason. I don't know why. I think I was just tired of it. But I knew the historical, and I knew that I was older, that it would be important to me, and especially my kids. I have 2 sons and a daughter, and I knew it'd be important. I'm glad that I was part of it. I'm glad I took the pictures I did and the writing that I did about all of it, because it was important. But you're right. I'm an FO calling in artillery in combat. That's pretty rare, these days, and or
Yeah.
it was back in 2003, and it wasn't lost on me. I knew how important it was and historical.
How was it for your whole team? Was your fist co-located? Were you all like in one vehicle?
Oh yeah,
or did
we
they
were
have you
all
guys
in
spread out? Okay.
We were in a fist vehicle, so it was an AAV with the CO was
Yeah,
in
the
that
C-squared.
the fist AAV, and then the fist team leader, Nate Scholl, and the forward air controller, Captain Ray Lawler, was there. The mortar FO, but back then it was PFC Emerson, and I think he got busted down, but every good Marine does, right? I guess. But
That happens.
and then our ROs and some scouts were with us, and the 2 reporters were with us, and I think that was it. And then the vehicle crewman and the platoon commander for the AAVs was in our vehicle too, because the CO was in the vehicle. So that was our AAV.
How
a
did
little
you
bit
guys?
more comfortable because it
Oh,
wasn't
I
so
bet.
crowded. Yeah.
Did you guys have a nice little setup where, hey, I'm going to be standing here observing, you're on the radio? Like what was your kind of process for your team inside the vehicle?
For us, it was, because you're kind of a mechanized force at that point. So my scout, Petrovich at the time, he was just helping with radios and helping maybe to observe and just kind of keeping up there. But we had it, the top doors for those AAVs were always open. We had these, I think they were pallets that we stood on. You can stand on the seats and stuff, but the pallets gave us a little more stability up there. So we stood on the pallets out, all of us. We had radios. The vehicles already had their own vehicle radios, and they had a pretty good comm suite for us. But we also had dismounted vehicles in case we had to go dismounted. So it was set up nice. We had me, the fifth team leader, and the forward air controller were right next to each other, and our ROs, our radio operators, were right there down below if they had to switch on the net, the vehicle operated nets for us, and it worked. We might have done some stuff better, but at that time it worked for us.
Yeah, I mean, like looking back, it's always easy to look back and be like, we should have just done this instead of that.
I know.
Plus, you're probably limited on some things too, because it's not like you're in the States where, hey, we should try this out. Like, you can't just go and get pieces or tools or anything to fix or change things up. It's whatever you got, it's what you got.
Yeah, you did it. We had the usual fish sheets of this, what's going on, timelines, all that stuff. If you do it, we had that stuff with us. It was pretty mobile. We were able to dismount if we needed to, as opposed to carrying on some big plot board or whatever the case is.
Yeah,
we were pretty just ready to go for anything that happened. We made it happen, and it wasn't pretty all the time, but it worked for us.
At what point, during the push up, could you kind of feel the dynamics change on the battlefield? Like, did it get more intense the farther up you went, or did it seem like
it kind of it ebbed and flowed? There was, like I said, there wasn't a big forward line of troops. It was all in the MSRs. So at one point, RCT-5's in ahead of RCT-7, who might be paralleling us on another MSR. But then within RCT-5, 3-5 was in the lead with 1-5 in the rear, and then 2-5 in the center. And it fluctuated depending on where you're at, what you've been doing, and RCT-5 commander was Colonel Dunford at the time, and whatever he wanted going on, and it was just kind of ebbed and flowed in some places. I mean, just 500 meters in front of us, 3-5 might be in a big fight on the side of the road, and we're just sitting down there waiting. Nothing's for us. It doesn't see anything. It's all where you're at. It just ebbed and flowed, and some stuff would get crazy, and then a lot of times a lot of boredom, as you know, there's a lot of boredom going on, and it changed. You never knew it was going to happen. You couldn't really sit down and I'm going to go to sleep as we're driving up, because you wanted to track where you're at. You wanted to have targets. Now established Alpha Bravo 1008 as a priority target. If you're in the lead, and it just ebbed and flowed. You just kind of went with it. And sometimes they got crazy, and sometimes just a lot of boredom too.
What was the busiest time for you and your FIST team?
It was in Baghdad. All of it was well, the initial push into Iraq was we were busy, but when we were in front, occasionally it would get busy, but most of it was all Baghdad. And we went in there the 9th. We were on the outskirts. I don't know if we want to get into this now, but we were on the outskirts of Baghdad. I think it was April 9th. While everybody else was saying Baghdad had fallen, it all hadn't. April 10th is when we had a really big firefight all the way basically from what used to be called Saddam City. Now it's called Sodom or Sadr City. And back then we were just sitting on the side of a road, parked out. We were waiting to link up with the Special Forces A team because we got tasked to secure the Al-Azamaya Palace in northwest Baghdad on the Tigris. So we were waiting for them, linked up with them one night, and then we started making our push to. But there's another story. Let me get one of the more events that I think right there is we were waiting to leave with that Special Forces unit. For whatever reason, we were waiting around, and you know how that is. And the Special Forces unit had a couple, I think they were paramilitary CIA officers who were just standing on the road watching the vehicles pass by. And they were watching, and next thing you know, they started shooting at some white vehicle. And you know how Marines are. If there's a target they're shooting at, this whole line of Marines opened up on this vehicle, me included. We're just sitting there. All of a sudden, we didn't know if we were taking fire. They started shooting at this white vehicle, and we were all, at least those of us, in a safe position to open up on this vehicle and thinking it was. They said it came around multiple times. I think they thought it was, it was some Fedayeen fighters, because there was insurgency back then. It was the Fedayeen fighters were the Ba'ath Party loyalists, the really diehard Saddam lovers. As all the conscripts, gave up arms and left, these Fedayeen fighters were the ones who really stood and fight, especially during that time. And that's who they were looking for, I guess, and ended up blowing the hell out of this vehicle. As we moved on later on, we found out, though, unfortunately, that, hey, that vehicle wasn't it. There were kids in it. There was a family in it. And why they, I'm not going to question them why they shot and what, we shot. And, it's sad, but it was interesting, too, is that all these Iraqis around celebrating. We had that shooting, quiet, and then as they're doing a battle damage assessment of this vehicle and who was in it, Iraqis come back out, looting and partying and having a good time, just celebrating the fall of Saddam and the Ba'ath Party, I guess. But it's odd how that stuff happens over there. And that stuff happened a few times, and
it's different. You guys were way more mixed in with the civilian populace, especially in somewhere like Baghdad. Compared to when I was in Marja or Sangin, these farming villages in Afghanistan, there's no, it's not a city at all, there's civilian casualties that definitely happen. I mean, that happened there. I can think of that one I know for sure from my 2011 deployment where a DM shot a farmer that they thought was putting in an IED. He was farming at night next to the road. And at that time, the rule in the area was supposed to be if you're farming at night, that's fine, but you have to have a lantern. So we know that's what you're doing. Okay. You're walking around with a lantern. And I guess this dude was out there farming and without a lantern, but he was right next to the road. And from the DM's angle, it looked like he was placing an IED. It looked like he was digging in the road, not next to it.
I saw it. My other deployments to Iraq, we saw that too, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that's, and like it's weird. You say it's not weird. It's weird for people probably here in the U.S. to think like, oh, some people got killed and then they just kept partying. Like, I think lives don't mean as much or something in some of these countries. And I don't want to say it like that. Maybe death isn't as impactful on them
I think
because they've seen way more of it.
So much more of it as opposed to the States or Western cultures. It's just, they deal with it. I mean, obviously, if you lose a family member, it hurts regardless where you're at. But maybe the empathy from other neighbors because they see it so much isn't there. I don't know.
I can't imagine what it was like for those people living under the reign of Saddam Hussein, where these people are completely afraid, it'd be like living underneath the rule of the mob. If you fuck something up, they're going to kill you, and there's a lot of guys who've talked about how Iraqis weren't scared of you pointing your rifle or anything at them, but if you pulled your pistol out, it freaked them out because that's what they were all like.
Yeah,
that's what they were all killed
I heard
with.
that same thing. Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that same thing too because most people died from pistols because of some Ba'ath Party member or some soldier, or whatever or cops or whatever the case is.
That's what they'd assassinate them with. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
What were your interactions with the locals? I mean, did you really have an opportunity to that much?
We stopped occasionally, and they'd come over and try to give you cigarettes or sell you cigarettes, the Marine cigarettes, or whatever the case is. And back then, it was different than post invasion during the insurgency. Is civilians you kept civilians back as far as you could, unless you wanted to talk to them. It was because everybody was really. It seemed at the time they were happy and celebratory and for the most part. And I mean, we didn't let them get in the vehicles and go between, but you let them get closer, and there's a little more tolerance for them getting closer to you than there might have been maybe in 06 when we went back, or 05, or when you were there in 08 or whatnot, or in Afghanistan. But it was just different. Of course, the ROEs were more lenient as well. During the invasion, it was basically either you're with us or you're not. And of course, that's a simplistic term. That's not necessarily our ROEs, but it was a lot more. It wasn't as restrictive going in a full invasion as it was maybe later on during the insurgency.
Yeah, because I mean, it's an invasion, so it's like immediately take out like you guys all turning on that one vehicle because someone's shooting at it. In your mind, it's like, hey, there's a threat that's been identified. Yep. Let's mitigate this threat. Let's take care of this threat, and then we move on to the next thing. Exactly. You're not really thinking about it. Yeah,
and then when you get into round,
and then when you get into that building the country back up, that's when you really, the ROEs become a lot more restrictor.
Yeah, rightfully so, I guess. But I mean, not as restrictive as I've heard it later on in some of those deployments, but but rightfully so. I mean, you're there to supposedly help them, but
when you guys were on your way up, what was like the enemy composition? Were you seeing any uniformed soldiers, or was it? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we were seeing some enemy soldiers. There were some T-55s rolling around, BMPs, BTRs. They'd be under a bridge, and a lot of times we passed them, they'd already been blown up by aircraft or the lead battalion or the tanks from the lead battalion. Or if we're in front, it happens fast. They hit these tanks, and then they're or the BTRs, and they're burning hulks, and that was it. You see those poor conscripts burning, trying to escape from them, and then and a lot of you'd see them. Dead soldiers quite a bit that were still uniformed. But then again, as we get closer to Baghdad, we saw a lot of boots on the ground. We saw a lot of uniforms laying on the street, and a lot of young Iraqi men, in the man dress or whatever you call that, walking south. We know that obviously they were soldiers that they were deserting left and right, and they didn't want to be in a uniform.
Now, how did you guys treat those kind of people? Did you okay, this dude's most likely a soldier? He's retreating, or he's like trying to get away, so we're just going to let that happen? Or were you trying to detain these people and keep them, like process them with other POWs, or how did that work with the POWs?
I think a lot of it was situational dependent, and it depended on what the situation. I hate that term, of course. You've heard it a lot. It just depends on what was happening then. A lot of times we'd see them just walking in there, just keep going south. But a lot of times you see them on the side of the road, and Marines would have them handcuffed, and they were searching them and talking to them to see what was going on. It just depended maybe on the commander at that time, who was in lead, and what was going on. We saw all of it. We saw masses of young men walking back, waving at us, and in their man dresses or whatever. But then we also saw those same individuals that were detained and were getting searched and interrogated. I guess.
What were they doing with these detainees? How were they holding them? Do you know? I know you were ahead of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we started then moving. They think detain them. They might have some other unit come up and hold them, or they let them go if there was no tactical intelligence to get from them. But from what I could recall, at least for me, it was just some were letting go, and some they did detain. And maybe if there was, like I said, tactical intelligence they could gain from them, they hand them off to, some other unit who that was their job.
Yeah, man.
So we could keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I mean, the invasion was happening so fast. You don't really have time to worry about something like that.
We couldn't keep up with the logistics. Or the logistics couldn't keep up with the speed. So a lot of times, once we had a big tactical pause for, I think it was like about a week in the middle of it at the beginning of end of March, I think it was, beginning of April, and we just kind of paused for I think it was 4 or 5 days. I don't know if it was for logistics to catch up or they were trying to figure out. I remember I was going back the other day looking through that journal, and we really didn't know why. I'm sure there's right now. It's probably in some book, but I think a lot of it had to do with the logistics keeping up with it, especially fuel. Bringing that fuel up from the.
There was a massive sandstorm too, right? And during that time.
Yep. That I forget the date of that, but that was it. It was just one day. Started getting. It didn't just like I'd seen those videos of those things rolled in. It didn't roll in like that. It just started getting windy and cloudy, and before you know it, it was orange and it was a sandstorm.
That
we
orange
could barely move. Yeah, it was that orange. It was everywhere. We could barely move forward. But that was a good point with artillery. Was I think 3.5 was in the lead at that point with RCD-5, or maybe 2.5. But and artillery was just pounding. And I'm listening over the COF net, the conduct of fire net of what was going on, and it was suspected ambush site. So they were just inching forward, I think, from what it sounded like, and any possible place they could ambush from, artillery was just pounding them as we tried to move forward. But I think it became a point where we couldn't move forward anymore, and we just kind of did a pause to kind of let the weather push through, the sandstorm push through. But it was about 8 hours of that sandstorm, and
just out in it.
It just did it, and out in it. And then at some point it started raining, so all that sand became mud. And I remember the next morning it was clear, but it was just this orange. It was on everything, and we were sleeping in not fighting holes. Just you'd stop, you dig holes so you could sleep in. So if they started hitting us with mortars, or artillery, you're not above ground. So you dig these little sump pits to sleep in, and it was all water. It was nasty.
That's the weather, man. That it'll get you. It'll get you. And those sandstorms, it's weird. Like before I joined, seeing photos from like the invasion and different parts of the war, where it's like orange and all that. You're like, man, I wonder if it really looks like that, or if that's just like a thing with the photo. And it's like, dude, it really does look like that when it first like kicks off. It gets a weird orange, like orange, Mars, like you're on fucking Mars or something.
Yeah, exactly what it looks like. Is that Mars, like a Mars planet? And I guess that's from the color of the sand and the sun coming. I don't know, but it was interesting.
It sucks to have gone through one, but at the same time, I appreciate it, like getting to experience something like that because, I mean,
I hadn't seen them before.
No, I hadn't either. And I remember going to Afghanistan. We had a really, really bad one in 2009 when I was in Iraq. Me and this dude got caught out in it. We were trying to get to the TQ flight line to fly out for some shit. And they're like, dude, there's no flights going out, this massive storm. You need to go back to your unit or whatever.
Yeah.
And me and this dude are trying to work our way through this massive sandstorm. He doesn't have a flashlight. It's nighttime. He doesn't have a flashlight. He doesn't have iPro. Or he had a flashlight. He didn't have iPro. And it was so bad, I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. And I remember him holding onto my pack, or holding onto my, pack, I think. And I had both of our flashlights, both were Surefires. And I'm holding them up, trying to walk through this storm just to be able to see and like get back to our tents and shit. And it's like, it's just such a crazy thing that happens over there.
I think that, and also there was, I forget the details, but when it was really thickest and it was still light out and you couldn't see, or even at night when you couldn't see, it was bad. They didn't want anybody going anywhere because you could walk 5 feet out and you get disoriented and you can't find your way back. Or they don't know who's coming up at you. And and I think, and if I recall correctly, 3.5 had their XO or their operations officer actually got killed there at night because he was sleeping on the ground and a tracked vehicle, either a tank or an AAV, had ran over him and killed him. I mean, that types of, you got to fight the enemy, but you're also fighting the weather and all this other nonsense, and just sad. What it causes. I mean, not even in battle, you got ran over.
You can easily get disoriented. The only reason he and I made it back is I was taking those flashlights and shining them straight down, and there's a road in TQ.
Oh, okay.
And and I followed the white line of the road. Yeah. And I just stood on that white line and followed it because I was like, hey, it's up this way somewhere to the left. I just got to follow this white line for a while. And that's how we got back. But man, it's such a disorienting thing.
You'll hit HESCO barriers or something back then and you'll realize the edge of it or something. But those things are really disorienting.
During the push up, there's a lot of talk, or there's some talk about, I think there was a whole tank crew that was killed when like the driver fell asleep and they were like rolled over into the river. Things like that happened. Did you see anything like that? Because they was moving so fast and it was constant. You guys really weren't getting sleep,
That incident, I remember that incident when it happened. I mean, I didn't know which tank it had just happened, and we like tank went off the bridge. I think we were crossing either Euphrates or Canal, Euphrates or Tigris, one of them. And I don't know how. I don't know if they don't know if the driver fell asleep or what are the cases, but regardless, it doesn't matter at this point. They went off the bridge and sunk and ended up, top down in the tank in one of those canals or one of the rivers because of, just sleep or what other just that crap that happens in combat, and it's unfortunate to die like that.
Did sleep deprivation become an issue for you guys at all?
Yeah, I think it did. Not necessarily me. I've always been pretty good with limited sleep, but I think a lot of it had to do with like the vehicle drivers, like AAV vehicles drivers, because they're also the mechanics. So we'd stop. They're necessarily. I think some of they switched off. Hey, you need to get sleep, but those guys were also then working, doing maintenance on the tracks and trying to fix this and trying to do that. And as we might get an hour, 2-3 hours of sleep at a position, they're up working, and then they're back driving. I mean, I think they were smart enough to know that hey, look, the next driver needs to get some sleep. The other, the VC, who's the vehicle guy, the vehicle Marine in the back, who's kind of, herding the cats of the Marines and the AVs, is going to be working to do maintenance. But it was an issue for a lot of the drivers. I wasn't a driver, but I was up most of the time, and it ended up, how it is. It starts playing games with your mind and your ability to do simple tasks. And that's just that somebody waiting for something to happen or keeping track of a map. I couldn't imagine, driving a tank through that, being tired, over a bridge. I mean, I couldn't imagine those guys.
Yeah, and especially when you're having like real world incidents are happening. You're getting an actual gunfight or you're being shelled or whatever. So your adrenaline is spiking and then coming down and spiking and then coming down. So that's got to make sleep want to come on even harder, I think. After you've crashed from so many like adrenaline spikes, there's got to be a point where you're like, fuck this, I just need to go to sleep. I'm just going to close my eyes for just a second. You do that whole thing. Man.
I know. It's human nature. But and a lot of mistakes were made, but that's just, not necessarily the fault of those Marines. It's just how it is sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. So once you guys got to Baghdad and kind of set in, like, hey, this is where we're at now. Like, we made it. The war is not over, but like we made it to Baghdad.
We made it to Saddam City. We linked up with that Special Forces team because they were because we figured they thought, I think there might have been a case where Saddam was still in a palace, and they're the ones that get the really high value targets, HVTs, and we link up with them, and they're all in these kick-ass softback Humvees with each door has a 240 Golf or a Saw. I mean, just awesome vehicles. Of course, no armor. None of the vehicles had armor anyway back then, I guess, except for tanks and maybe the AVs. But so we're pushing through, and we're going on. I forget which it is. We're going through. We're pushing west through Saddam City, and there's nobody in the streets. All the power lights are out, and then we're standing up there. I'm tracking my map, and I'm rolling target. Okay, established target. 1, 2, 3 is priority target. Intersect stuff like that, and then the tracers started coming at us. And I remember looking behind us and seeing the tracer fire coming at us, and I'm reporting it over the FSC net, and then that's when they start reporting it too. Everybody starts getting hit with RPGs are flying over. This is both sides of the road. I guess they're in what do you call that? I forget the shooting. There's a name for it when you're basically a shooting squad shooting at each other. But anyway, and it was it. And I couldn't believe, because it sounds impossible. Well, we're on this road for hours, and every step of the way they're shooting at us. But I'm assuming that the Fedayeen knew that the only way to get to this area was this MSR, this road, and they were just waiting for us. And we're going down, just exchanging fire, and aircraft really weren't overhead yet. We were going too fast for artillery at that point to kind of by the time I lay on a new target, we're already, the lead vehicle's at that target. So you try to do that, but at this point, then it became everybody in the vehicles are shooting, no matter where you're at, shooting outbound. And we're going to cloverleafs, and the cloverleafs were bad because they're hiding underneath the bridges to hide from aircraft. They're in the room, they're in the buildings, shooting RPGs at us. There was a point where we missed a turn. We had to turn back around on this cloverleaf, and they're popping illumination over us. So the illumin's popping, either mortars or artillery illume, over us. So we're just, it's washing out your NVGs, your night vision goggles, and they're still shooting at us. And it really wasn't that accurate. It was pretty high, which is normal for, I think, for those who haven't shot very much. They're shooting high over us, but we're shooting back. But then as we stop, it starts getting more accurate. And there was this one instance, all of us from the vehicle standing up, and it's kind of the sides of the AVs up to here as you're standing out shooting, and they rake our vehicle with automatic weapons fire. It could have been AK, it could have been a different machine gun. It could be a machine gun, and then it hits the vehicle, and you see sparks go over it. But at the time, it looked like tracers, and I remember the tracers hitting, or the sparks hitting me, and thinking, I'm hit, as it's bounced, and then I fall back. I'm like, I'm not. And even my FO was like, you're hit, or my RO is, you're hit. And I'm like, I'm not hit. And I get back up and you keep fighting. And they hit the vehicle again, and it hits our antennas. Just luck or unluck of the draw, hits our antennas. One of our antenna goes down, sparks over everybody. So we thought our vehicle was hit by RPGs. I mean, just the confusion of this whole fight in the dark. And we hadn't even gotten to the palace yet. It is overtaking us. And I saw a Marine next to me. We're stopped. They're trying to fix a track that went down. They're shooting illumination at us. They're shooting RPGs and machine gun fire. And this man, and you can see with your NVGs, this man or Fedine or somebody in the window, Marine next to me, bam, right there. The guy must have been, I don't know, 20 feet up, because we're close to these buildings. If we do a U-turn, it shoots right through he didn't have he just shoots, and that's just how it was going. And just, it was really interesting, and because we weren't taking very many casualties at that point, but the exchange of fire was extraordinary heavy, to a point that as daylight came, Cobras couldn't come because it was too heavy fire. They weren't, somebody within the wing or somebody wasn't allowed to support because of the amount of fire, or the threat of AAA, or the threat of SAMs or something wasn't allowing them. It wasn't the pilots. The pilots probably be more than happy to come and support us, but we didn't have any support initially from Marines until we got to the palace. So day breaks, we're kind of confused, because it's all those, those cities in the Middle East are just confusing, and some roads might work, you don't know how to connect to them. So we're crossing these bridges, and I think it's like a double-decker bridge or close to the side. And I remember the SF guys throwing grenades over the side of the bridge because the Fedayeen were on the other side below us, and they'd come up and try to shoot as we were passing by. So they're throwing HE grenades over the sides of the bridge. And then just the crazy stuff like that. And then finally we get to the palace, and the Al Azmaya Palace is on the Tigris River, on the bank of the Tigris. So half of it is you got your back to the Tigris. The other half is obviously within the city. So we get in there, we circle up, everybody's doing what they do after something like that. You're drinking water, you're like, oh my God, you're just talking. And then First Sergeant Green, now Sergeant Major Green, comes up, shaking his head at basically the FIST vehicle or the command vehicle, and saying, he's gone. And the CO, Captain Sokol, was like, who? When he told him, he's like, Gunner Sergeant Bohr. And Gunner Sergeant Bohr, obviously the company gunny, and he had been, he was in a softback logistics Humvee, and they even give him the opportunity. Look, Gunny, this is dangerous coming in. You can wait to come back with the rest of maybe some of the RCT until it's more safe. But he's like, no, I'm going with the company, sir. He's going. So him and his Marines in the logistics vehicle, and then a high back Humvee, soft sides, followed all that, coming through all of it. And as you can imagine, how soft of a target those Humvees are.
Yeah.
And he, some of the stories, and I wasn't there, I'm just going to repeat what I heard, is guys in the back were getting shot and hit. The driver got hit in the wrist. I mean, all those bullets coming through that soft Humvee, and then unfortunately, Gunner Sergeant Bohr had gotten killed during that fight coming in. And so that's when we found out, is when we actually went into the palace. But then sure enough, and a lot of people couldn't believe it. We're like, what the heck, I mean, you hear a KIA, especially when you know them as your company, it's at first it's unbelievable. It doesn't register, but I mean it's obviously true. But and then sure enough, the company commander got word from the battalion commander, hey, there was supposedly a Saddam sighting at a mosque a few blocks away. And I don't know how they come up with this. I don't know if it's a SIGINT. That's just the word
Who
we
knows?
got, was that there was a Saddam. Yeah, so it could have been the SF guys, but the SF guys were in soft vehicles. And either they weren't told to, or they're like, we're not going out in their vehicles.
Yeah.
So they stayed in. The rest of the battalion stayed in. Weapons companies had perimeter security. Everybody else were manning the tops of the buildings at the palace because we were still getting hit. And so Alpha Company with, I think, some tanks, a section of tanks or a platoon of tanks, leaves, makes our way to this mosque. I forget the name of the mosque, to be honest with you, but and the whole way there were bunkers by the Fedayeen, like bunkers on the side of roads these guys were using. The tanks were going off. Everywhere there was just fire from both sides. And we're right up in those AAVs, as you know, they're high.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're right next to a building, and we're crushing cars going over this in these alleyways trying to get to that mosque. But then you see the Fedayeen soldiers have been killed, just laying in the streets. AAVs running over them because there's nowhere to maneuver. It's ridiculous and mind blowing actually at the time. So we surround the mosque. One of the platoons, led by Nick Horton, goes in. They go into the mosque. As you know, now it's a big deal to go in any mosque. Back then it didn't matter, especially if there's a Saddam sighting. We're going in this mosque. There was no asking division or any of that stuff, and at least that I know of. And so they went into the mosque, start clearing out. But outside, those fighters were hitting us, RPGs everywhere, hitting us, raining. They'd usually hit pretty high, and then rain down rocks on you, or they're hitting the sides of some of these AAVs. And a couple of AAVs, and I think this is that fight, is they hit a couple packs because you put your packs, you strap them to the outside of the AAV because there's just no room. Couple packs were getting blown up because the RPGs were hitting the packs. Good thing because they were detonating on the pack, and they lost all their power basically on the outside of it, as opposed to those anti-vehicle, those anti-armor warheads that'll penetrate and go through, and that's when most of the damage is. So so they were hitting us pretty good. And then so finally, air comes on station. We get a section of A-10s. And there might have been other aircraft, but from what I recall, the A-10s were on station because obviously they can withstand it. The Marine air wasn't coming on, or Marine rotary wing wasn't coming in because of the threat of small arms or surface to air, whatever the case. But Ray Lawler, which is our forward air controller, called in. I think it was 1,000-pound and a 500-pound bomb. I mean, danger close, within 2 buildings away. And I mean, it was so close where it was like, hey, open your mouths because it's going to blow your eardrums from the pressure. We didn't know. Of course, I don't think it was anything like that, even that close. Then they come around, and one of the buildings, we had those photographers taking pictures the whole time. A couple of buildings, he's coming in with that 30-millimeter GAU doing gun runs on these buildings and just laying waste. And it was just really close. And I know a lot of people have problems with A-10s, and rightfully so for some incidents that happened in that during the invasion and other parts of just combat throughout its history. But I mean, for us, at that little bitty part of the war, those A-10s were really spot on, and we liked what they did, and they helped us out when some of the aircraft couldn't for obvious reasons, and they did well. They were on target, at least those guys were. And eventually we met up to some of those pilots, and it was funny because they're old men. They're Air National Guard pilots.
Yeah.
That are like in their 60s, it seems like, with beer bellies, and it's different than Marine pilots. The Marine pilots are all trim for the most part and young. These A-10 pilots, probably started flying back when there was a Soviet Union and before, and but during that fight, and it was a lot of vehicles were getting hit. One of the tanks got a mobility kill, so they couldn't move, but the tank, the turret could move. And that was the platoon commander was in there. He had to switch out his vehicle to another tank that could move. They just left that tank there, with a couple crewmen inside that could rotate and defend themselves as we pushed on to the to that mosque. Anyway, but within the mosque, they pulled some guys out, and they were detainees. They had Syrian passports, foreign fighters that came to, to kill the American infidels, I guess. But
yeah,
of course, there was no Saddam in there at all.
No, not at all. We know. Yeah, later on they got him. They picked him up.
Yeah,
the A-10 platform is a good platform. It's a very capable platform. The pilots are very responsive because they're flying so low and slow. They can, quickly identify ground targets and stuff like that. There's a lot of issues that have happened, but it's just one of those things, man. Fratricide. It's unfortunate. There's always, I don't know if you'll ever mitigate it, just because the human involvement. We make mistakes. Humans make mistakes, and it's as technology. Yeah, I mean, as technology increases, we still make mistakes. We still, hey, now we have IR beacons or we have IR strobes that we can put on us so that it makes it easier to see us or mark our positions. Well, I mean, there was a SF team that the Air Force JTAC in Afghanistan dropped on their position because the JTAC or CCT, I think he was, asked for them to identify, like, hey, can you see our strobe? And the pilots were looking through a sensor that you can't see our strobes through, and was like, no, we don't see it. Okay, that must be our target then, and then dropped. They dropped on themselves. It's just one of those things. A-10s, for those of us that have worked with them, when I worked with them in training, I never really messed with them overseas. Even overseas, though, when I saw them overseas, I remember our air officer getting into it with one of the pilots because he refused to be above the IR, or we had a UAV. And he refused to be above it. He actually checked off station. He's like, if you're not putting me at the bottom of the stack, I'm out of here, and left. And then called our COC, and him and our air officer got into it. They're some of those dudes are very set in how they do their stuff. And part of it is because they're part of the Air Force who does close air support differently. And I think there's a lot of joint training and a lot of joint operations and stuff that have cleaned some of that issue up. But Marine JTACs and Air Force pilots sometimes don't mix as well because we expect certain things that Marine pilots are already used to, and Air Force pilots aren't, like getting readbacks from -2 on everything, and some of the different calls. We're very controlling. Like, here, I want you to fly in this airspace, this direction, this altitude, and drop this bomb. And they want to know where you're at, where the target is, and then they'll take it from there.
But that's not close air support. The ground controller has the control because they're the one writing that check, or at least the ground commander at that area. But we've seen that before. We've seen it. Go ahead.
There's a time and place, for more restrictive, like, hey, I need you to be on this final attack heading, or I need you to be in this window. Part of the problem is there's Marine JTACs that aren't experienced enough, or they just give a 30-degree final attack heading as a standard every time, when it's like, bro, there's no reason to restrict them to that. Give them like a 70-degree one, give them that flexibility if you can. And
they'll appreciate it.
So, hey man, it's combat. Shit happens, unfortunately. And I used to teach a fratricide class, and there's so many, examples of it, unfortunately. And I just don't think it's going to end until humans are no longer fighting each other, just because human error is inherent.
It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. You try to do everything you can with command and control and deconfliction, but in the end, it happens.
When you were in these, you're talking about sustained firefights over like a long period of time, receiving fire.
Hours,
I'm sure at the beginning it was like, holy shit, like we're getting shot at. And then how does that intensity kind of wear off? Does it kind of just become part of the atmosphere that you're in at that time, where you're not as concerned?
That's a good question. I think it ebb and flows with moments of intense shooting, and you could tell from the gunfire to slow, sporadic, occasionally this, and just it ebbs and flows in your area, and your sector of fire could be extremely different than 2 vehicles over as we're surrounding that mosque. They might see guys pop around the corner shooting AKs or trying to go pop and get those RPG shots at before they die. And back then, Fedayeen, we always made a joke because the dumb ones were dead who jump out in front and shoot an AK at a tank. When you started moving to 05 and 04, they were a little bit smarter, those who survived, for the most part. And those guys were jumping out and just nonsense. And he's like, I can't believe this guy's jumping out. But it would ebb and flow. And we have a picture that Mark Avery got of our forward air controller with his pistol up, legitimately shooting. At some point, and calling in his airstrike. I mean, it was because a lot of times you say, oh, what's that fact got his pistol out for? That's bullshit. It was legitimate. These guys were popping around corners just feet from the vehicle, or they're in a bunker that you didn't see, or there's a mouse hole that you didn't notice, and it ebbed and flowed, and we had a lot of wounded. There was no KIA at that fight, but a guy actually, and I think I heard you talk about this before, but I forget his name. He was at Alpha Company. He got hit in the head with an RPG, but it didn't blow up, and I guess it hit. As you know, how those RPGs are like a cone shape. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it hit his helmet at that angle where it didn't hit the detonator and the tip of the warhead, but it hit the RPG hit his helmet, but from the side, and cracked his helmet. I think he obviously got evacuated, and just from the sheer pressure of that thing, but it didn't explode. Yeah. But I mean, could you imagine having that story of I got hit in the head by an RPG that didn't, obviously explode? I mean, it's
unkillable.
I mean, nonsense like that, and the engineers that were with us, they were in that little. They had like an armored bulldozer in case we needed to take down a wall, and that thing, I don't know, because the way it looked, it was different. That thing was a RPG magnet, kept getting hit, but their RPGs were set different or something. They weren't really penetrating the really anti-armor warheads they were supposed to, like you can take out a tank with the RPG. They were kind of just detonated on the surface, and they didn't seem to be as effective as they could have been.
Yeah, well, you can't get me mad about
Thank
that,
God.
I guess. Yeah, all right. At what point was the war over for you guys, or that deployment? Oh, I think I lost you. If you're talking, I can't hear you. I'm going to wait just a second, and then oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I don't know what happened, so but the question I think you asked me was, when was the war over for us?
Yeah, when was the deployment done?
So, we got back. Back to the palace. We stayed there for about a week, and then we did patrols outside at night. We got attacked that night as well. But I remember I slept through that. I was on a different building. I remember just sleeping through it, and they were shooting. They were probing us at the palace. Mm-hmm. And the forward air controller put a LMAV, a laser-guided Maverick missile, through that minaret of that mosque, but which is something you don't see all the time. But
yeah,
we went back there, and then about a week later, 10 days later, we went back to Diwania, and kind of there pretty much stopped for the most part. We eventually made our way back to Kuwait. I was back in the States in the end of May, so my deployment was only February 2nd to, I want to say, like May 19th, May 20th, or something like that. I got back to CONUS because we were scheduled to go on another deployment in December. So we got to fly home while everybody else floated home. So
yeah, well, did it feel weird, like being done, like coming back and being like, all right, we can shed our armor, we can kind of just walk around?
Yeah, it did. I think most part we were glad to shed the MOP gear, which we did that before we went into Baghdad. But it did. It was, it was different than the counterinsurgency stuff I did years later. But I didn't have any anxiety for the most part. I really wasn't anxious like I was before during the other deployments. But it was good. I came back. I didn't like stupid questions, but I think I transitioned pretty well. And I turned 30 on March 24th. We crossed the Euphrates that day, and I saw I was a little bit older than a lot of the guys, I think, the younger Marines at least, and it didn't bother me as much as it bothered me later on in those other deployments I did.
Yeah. Did your mindset change from, like, because this is your first combat deployment, right? And you've already been in as an enlisted infantryman, and now you're an artillery officer, and you've done all this training, and now you're actually deployed. Did your thought, like, of what combat was going to be like, I mean, did it meet your expectation, and did it change how you thought about it?
I think it did. I think it did. It didn't. That's a good question. I don't remember really thinking about it like that, but I do remember thinking, kind of like, wow, I can't believe I saw combat. You know how you kind of think like, wow, this is crazy when somebody shoots at you, and then all this other stuff that you do. It was a mindset of, you just maybe you internalize it. I didn't dwell on it, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is nuts. But I remember also thinking, this is it. Everything else, we thought we won, and we thought that was it. We're going to go, everybody's going back to CONUS, and Iraq's going to be free democracy. As you know, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it didn't work out how we had hoped. And I blame that. I blame that on civilians on the diplomatic side of it, and them not having a plan. Like, hey, let's go take over this country, or let's go, take someone out of power in this country, but not have a real fucking plan ready to go for when that happens. Like, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
We could talk forever about that nonsense, but my mind, I was good. I thought that was it. We're ready to go do another deployment somewhere, and we thought that was it. But as you know, it wasn't.
When you got back, did you have any guys that were like, you know what, I'm going to re-enlist. Like, I want to go back. Like, they knew the next deployment was coming up. And did you also have guys that said, fuck this, I'm done? Like, I got my deployment in, I'm done?
Both. Yeah, both. Some guys were like, that was crazy. I'm re-enlisting. This is awesome. And other guys were like, screw this, I'm out.
Yeah.
So,
like, I played the game once, no reason to go back.
That was it. I saw enough. I got the check in the box. I got my, my car, my combat action ribbon, all that nonsense, and that was it. But
yeah, that's crazy, man. It's one of those things where I guess people don't really think about it, or maybe not appreciate it. And there's a lot of pushback now about the Iraq War and why we got into it and this and that. But that's not anything that you have a decision over, or any of the Marines or soldiers that were there. You were just there. You were just told, okay, we're doing this war. It's going. It's happening. Yeah. You guys don't make those decisions. And going into it, I don't know, man. It's like you said, it was a historically significant event where you were part of an invasion force that toppled another country's leadership, and took over. Like, that's got to, I don't know, what is that? How do you feel? Like, saying that out loud, how does that make you feel?
I know it's, man, it's a lot of the guys who didn't go there kind of like, I wish I was part of that historic, but, I'm not judging anybody who didn't. I was just like, well, for me, and I was lucky. I wanted to be where I wanted to be. I was at where I was at, and I just, it's almost like it was meant to happen because I got a year to train with the infantry company I was with as an FO in my billet with the Marines I was going to go to combat with. That doesn't happen. We had an officer in our artillery battalion showed up early they pulled him from artillery school as a second lieutenant. How do you, now that's historic too. That's a different way, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to train with these Marines that I was going to be with, and I got to do that, and I'm lucky and fortunate for that, and as opposed to another one when we lost Shane Childers, he was KIA. About 7 days later, we actually got a combat replacement second lieutenant. And he showed up. I mean, could you imagine that?
Yeah,
showing up as a second lieutenant, replacing a senior first lieutenant who was a prior enlisted Gulf War veteran, as one of their best platoon commanders for the company, one of them at least, and she shows up to replace him as a second lieutenant just out of IOC. I mean, what do you do, And the guy he's a good guy, I'm assuming, but that platoon after that was kind of relegated then to supporting, elements, stuff like that.
Yeah,
for obvious
experience
reasons.
isn't there.
It's not the lieutenant's fault at all, and actually, I think the lieutenant now is actually this battalion commander of 1-5. And so he obviously stayed in and made enough to where the Marine Corps decided he can be a company or a battalion commander of a outstanding line battalion. So, but I think anytime,
I can't imagine being a combat replacement like that. I did a podcast episode with, as an officer for sure. I did an episode with Tony Musselman, who was a guy I worked with at 10th Marines, and he was also a MARSOC JTAC and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
And he went to TACP school. When he got to 210, our battalion sent him to TACP school. Yeah. This is like, he was in one of the first classes of sergeants that got to go. And a mutual friend, or someone from our unit named Jason Angell, which I've talked about on the podcast before, was killed during the battle in Marja, during his deployment in Marja. And Tony finished up TCP school, got back to the 10th Marines, and they're like, hey, dude, you're the replacement. Like, they're still in the fight. We need a JTAC, so you're it.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, right out of school and knowing you're going to replace the dude doing your job that just got killed, You know, and he knew Jason too. I'm pretty sure he knew. I feel bad not knowing that. I'd have to go back to other podcast episode and listen to it, but I'm almost certain he knew him. But you know, it's that's tough, man. That's got to be like what the mindset of going into that, knowing you're a combat replacement for someone that was killed. Like,
I know
it's rough.
They
for
had
anyone.
Charlie Company 1-5, their FO, who was actually with Fox Battery 211, is Tavis McNair. He got wounded in Baghdad during that whole fight. They shot an RPG. He got shrapnel. He was in the TC hatch of the AAV, I guess. That's how they were set up. He got wounded and sent out. But at that time we were done, so they didn't do any replacement type FOs.
Yeah.
You know, for those guys who got wounded at the end.
Have you ever seen the documentary Severe Clear?
No, I haven't.
I've asked a few people about it. No one knows what I'm talking about. I guess it's an obscure one. It was on Netflix at one point. I don't think it is anymore, but it's a artillery lieutenant who was on the MEU that floated over for the invasion. Yeah. And he basically had a home video recorder and recorded the invasion.
Holy cow.
And he's got video of his guys in tracks, like looking down. His dudes are doing fire missions. I remember the one scene that really stands out to me is where he like yells down at either the radio operator or the FO that's on the hooks and was like, "Hey, send in a fire mission to that target, whatever." And the kid looks up with like 2 handsets, like, "I got 2 fire missions. You know, I'm already 2 and 2 cool. right now, sir." And I was like, "That's fucking sick." Like that dude's getting it done.
I haven't heard of that before.
You have to look it up.
Name? Remember?
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look.
Severe Clear. I just wrote it down.
Severe Clear. Yeah, man. So normally I'd like to get into your other deployments and stuff, but we're already at 2 hours, so we'll just have to set something else up and get into that. For those that don't know, you did 2 more Iraq deployments. You also went to TCP school. You also went to ANGLICO. Like you did all these other things. So there's definitely more to talk about. But I do appreciate you coming on. And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say my other 2 deployments were both with ANGLICO. First ANGLICO, I was a FIC team leader for both. The first one in Ramadi and Heat, the city of Heat or HIT, whatever you want to call it. And then the second one, I was the FIC team leader and ended up being the OIC for the MEF PSD because they pulled those officers there from ANGLICO. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Completely different one, but those are both crazy deployments for both those 2.
Well, I look forward to getting into those, and that's a good little preview for everyone else to check out your other ones when we set those up.
Oh yeah.
Do you put your social media out there? I don't know if you want to or not.
I don't do social media. I don't have any social media for the most part. So so I don't have any.
Yeah, no worries. So my social media is at former action guys at J Kramer Graphics. Both of those. My website's jkramergraphics.com. Everyone, make sure to check that out. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button and stuff like that. Spread the word. Tell somebody about it. Again, Jason, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been really, really fun talking to you, man. I really like talking to people that did the invasion because it's just such an interesting time. And although there's a lot of books. There's some books out there about it, but there's like so many different stories. I don't feel like there's enough books to cover what happened. Like before we started talking, I was trying to look up, kind of some specific stuff 11th Marines did during the invasion. And there's almost no specific information about the artillery units. And it's like, damn, dude, one of those gunners needs to write a book, and just talk about it.
Some
talk about
FDO or XO or something. I know. They
something, man.
Too. Yep.
For sure. So